This is good.
I apologize. I was at another meeting, as you might suspect, and I knew this would probably occur, so I had my administrative assistant bring all my paperwork here with me. But we got a lot to go through today. You'll see originally, and like we have in past years, we tried to schedule it on 2 days. When we looked at the content from what we had, it looked like we could probably get it out in 1 day. So we scheduled from 1 to 5 today. I don't know whether we're going to be able to get it all done in time, but If you're on the tail end and you want to have your information heard, please stick around. Another thing, to try and expedite the process, many things are in the budget that are universal, such as pay raises, and they've got a little S by there in the book. You don't have to talk about that. If you've got a burning question, you have some money needs in a certain area, please ask, and our staff here will be glad to question those things that we think are important. So I'd like to start off by asking Representative Al Williams to give a blessing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've waited a long time for this opportunity, so I will be very deliberate. Let us pray. Almighty everlasting, thou art eternal God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Georgia. We ask that you help us keep in mind that everything we do and say affects someone. For it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, first up, we've got the Council of Accountability Judges.
Do we have judicial counsel?
Judicial Council, I'm sorry. Well, I was looking at the wrong page here. I should have known since we had a conversation this morning. And you're welcome to sit at the table, or if you prefer, you could go to the podium, whichever suits your needs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I am Charlie Bethel, and at the direction of the Chief Justice, I chair the Judicial Council's Budget Committee, and with me is Andrew Zoll from the Administrative Office of the Court's Judicial Council. We will present to you the 3 items that are a part of the Judicial Council's amended fiscal year budget request, and certainly make ourselves available for questions. I will note that the 3rd item is a request that passes through the Judicial Council but comes from the Council of Municipal Court Judges, and Judge David Will is here. I will certainly present that item, but if you have any questions about the specifics of it, Judge Will is here to speak to those specifics. First item, and on your tracking sheet, it should be line number 6.4.1 if we've done our work well. In section 6.4, the Judicial Council's Standing Committee on Access to Justice has a request. This is a continuing request that's been before the committee before for $125,000. This relates to our efforts to get a quality study done by the Carl Vinston Institute of Government about self-help legal centers. This is what historically were called law libraries. These aren't libraries with dusty books in them. They are centers where individuals who are unrepresented have access to forms, and the model is to expedite the court process so that judges aren't sending people back and back and back to redo work so that the court becomes bogged down. There are a lot of models across the country, and quite frankly, we don't think anyone is doing the work of data to determine how efficient the different models are. So the idea is to have a study. The number, as we presented it last year as part of the big budget request, was a placeholder for the study. That study has come back now bid at $168,532, which is, of course, above the $125,000 that's in the request. We can work with the office, if y'all have an appetite for that request, to make sure that those numbers match up and don't exceed the big number. The next item on your line.
Excuse me,
yes,
do other states do this already?
In various
or is this a model?
In various different mechanisms, and we have multiple different legal self-help centers in Georgia. There's a center in Fulton County. There's a center in Albany. There's one in Macon. There's others. There's others around the state. Those are the biggest ones that we see the most traffic from in access to justice. And the answer to the chairman's question is yes, and they do it in a number of different ways. And when we set out to say what's best practice, we were convinced that nobody knows what best practice is, and so we've had the meetings with folks at Carl Vinson and said, how do we measure success in this space? What are ways? And that is the focus of what we're trying to do now, so that we're not just the motivation. Nobody questions that this is a helpful thing to do. But what we don't want to, be, from a return on investment standpoint, what we don't want to be doing is putting money behind something that we know is a sensible thing to do, but we don't know how to measure whether we're doing it well or not. And so that's what we're trying to define with the partnership with Carl Vinson, is how do we know what works in this space?
And you say models, is that civil or criminal, or is it things like wills and?
It's primarily civil, because you have the Public Defenders Council for indigent defense on the criminal side. And so it is wills and guardianships and divorces and all,
Okay.
There, as many of you know, the gap of representation is only growing, and so we have folks coming to court for any number. Dispossessory matters, that comes to mind, is a big traffic item for those classes of courts. Any other questions on that point? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second item on your list is your line number 6.4.2. This comes from our standing committee on grants. This is, again, a carry-through item. We had requested at the Judicial Council level $619,000, and you funded $200,000, which we appreciate and is already in the process of being deployed. When I spoke to you the first time about this project, Medical Legal Partnerships, I tried to explain it, and there are models that are already operating in Georgia in this space. Since you have funded, we have already started the process, and I will just give you an example. People always want to know what there are, and I say it's a full spectrum. A child who is awaiting a transplant can't receive the transplant because of transplant protocols unless they have a home environment that is considered healthy to go home, because they're going to have infections and rejection issues. So these are embedded attorneys in a hospital who are able to help potentially break a lease and get somebody into a healthy living environment, or probably more efficient than breaking a lease, find an aunt or an uncle or a next of kin who is willing to take a temporary guardianship or custody arrangement so that can be the designated home where the individual is going to convalesce. That saves a panoply of people money, including the state, because that person gets the procedure and is not spending days in the hospital bed, plus compounded by all of the illnesses. The one that I just sent a request in anticipation of this meeting, what's a recent story? So some of the funds that you appropriated are being deployed at the MedLaw Clinic in Macon. And an example for you there is that a patient who was an adult with Down syndrome and frequent indigent care being provided in the hospital system, had a family member but who was not legally next of kin, who was providing care but running into the dilemma of not being next of kin, so that who can make medical decisions. And so the Medical Legal Partnership did the relatively simple task of creating a guardianship, but that has allowed an individual to make good decisions, keep somebody out of the hospital that didn't need to be in the hospital for any other reason than there was nobody to help make appropriate decisions. So that's the model that's working there, and that's the nature of that request. And of course, we will continue to pursue the funding level of that initial request, and that's what's underneath Medical Legal Partnerships. Any questions on the Medical Legal Partnership model?
Number 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know your original ask was 619, got to you're asking for 19. State the size of Georgia. Is that enough money to do? Just listening to what you described, and some of it's very urgent. Can you do what you've outlined with $619,000?
Well, that was for the entire fiscal year. We've
Well,
already used up half of it.
Well, that means, let's say $619,000 for 6 months. But I'm just wondering, the enormity, the possible enormity of what you're talking about and what I know goes through the court system, I'm puzzled by the amount.
The amount, thank you, Representative. The amount is what we think, between partnering with Georgia Legal Services, Atlanta Legal Aid, and other partners, we have the capacity to ramp up to and deliver. What I would say to you is that we believe, based on data that's been collected from these sorts of programs elsewhere, that we can demonstrate a significant savings to the state. Until we've demonstrated it, we probably ought not be asking for more and more money because we want to show that there's a savings. The other piece of this is that where these models are in effect, the healthcare industry also experiences substantial savings. And so part of the model we view is that potentially it becomes a seed or a pilot program so that the insurance industry and the healthcare hospitals would also be at the table. They cannot employ these individuals directly because many times there would be a conflict of interest, but the net benefit of having them there is a financial benefit to the institution. So that request was a representation of what we thought we can adequately deliver and manage, and then report back to you and say this is what that investment has done. And then maybe the request, it might be greater. It might be that we've been able to leverage with partners and private dollars as well.
Any additional questions? Well, I thank you for your testimony. We're always honored when members of the Georgia Supreme Court come and visit with us.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Chairman. The last item in the Judicial Council's request, amended budget request, is your line 6.4.3. As I mentioned, Judge David Will is here from the Council of Municipal Court Judges. This is a request that they've included and it will also be reflected in the fiscal year budget, the big budget that comes up for $18,951. The current budget line item for that council is $13,919. The bulk of these resources, I believe, and Judge Will can speak to it, are an attempt to take their 2-year planning cycle and make a budget, to provide a budget so that they can do planning and advancement. The municipal court judges are, by state law, have the council. The council has responsibilities, and I think that most of what they're looking for is really an effort to be able to discharge those in an ongoing fashion. But certainly if you have questions, I would defer to Judge Will.
Does the judge want to speak to the issue?
Judge, I don't know if you wanted to add anything or.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr.
May want to come to the podium.
I hope you got a good lawyer for that.
Actually, I'd prefer a better physician. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Justice Bethel said, this is a procedure that we're requesting to restore the funding that we used to have up until 2014 until 2020. Our budget remained the same at $16,185. That was cut because of the pandemic. We're asking to restore the funding we have plus a cost of living increase to continue with the strategic planning process, which we have participated in every year. And to fill in those gaps, we had relied on private contributions, judges paying their own way, and now we're ready to ask for restoration of that funding.
Any questions for the judge? Does that wrap it up?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Thank both of you. I see a couple of House members out here sitting in the audience. If you want to come up and sit here, you're welcome. It's completely voluntary, but nobody shot at us yet, so. Okay. Next up's the State Board of Pardons and Parole.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hitchens and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and represent the State Board of Pardons and Paroles as we relay the proposed amendments to the FY 2024 budget. Here with me today, I have our Chief Financial Officer, Kristen Kinney, and our budget, I believe, begins on page 18 of your tracking sheet. Outside of the statewide changes, the State Board of Pardons and Paroles has 4 unique line items. The first can be found under the Board Admin Program Budget, line 35.1.2. This is an increase of funds for training software in the amount of $3,900. We're requesting these funds as a one-time setup cost and first-year service of training record-keeping software to assist with our training record management of non-sworn staff, which are also required to take training every year. Our second amendment is under the Clemency Decisions Program, line number 35.2.2. That is to provide funds for overtime to address the Georgia Crime Information Center disposition backlog in the amount of $212,758. Working with the Criminal Data Exchange Board, Clerk of Court, Superior Courts, Department of Community Supervision, GBI, and GCIC, it was determined that a number of parole arrests in GCIC currently do not have a final disposition in the system. This line item will allow us to complete and close those open records to ensure law enforcement and the judiciary has access to a complete criminal record information when they come in contact with these individuals. Our third item is 35.2.3 to provide funds for equipment for 3 criminal investigators and 1 hearing examiner in the amount of $109,363. This line item is in support of positions request in the FY 2025 budget. These are post-certified law enforcement positions, so the request is for funding to be used for securing equipment such as bulletproof vests, firearms, duty gears, uniforms, computers, vehicles, as required for these officers to perform their duties. And last, I have under the Victim Services Program budget, line item 35.3.2. This is an increase in funds to offset the loss of federal funds supporting 2 positions in the amount of $31,807. We're requesting state funds to fund 2 victim advocate positions in the Georgia Office of Victim Services, which provides post-conviction victim services for the Georgia Department of Corrections, for the State Board of Pardons and Paroles, and the Department of Community Supervision. These positions are currently grant funded and have been funded at various levels since 2017 through the VOCA grant. However, VOCA fundings have been reduced over the past few years, and this past year was cut by 54%. So this funding will give us enough to get through the next 3 months to get us to the end of the year, and then we will address that through other revenue sources. And that will conclude.
I thought that was probably VOCA money. Everybody's running out of money with, that was involved in the crime victims. But the question I had was under 35.2.2, provide funds for overtime. I mean, I worked in state government for 43 years, and I can only remember overtime being paid in two different times, one for the Olympics and one for the G8. And I don't know if many agencies that pay overtime. I wondered for the necessity of that. I know you're short-staffed and only have a small group of people, but
So there was some discussion, do we contract this out and bring people in? But in order to access these records, and these records, as you know, go back
Sure.
30, 40, 50
Yep.
years, and having to operate in not only our system, correction system, community supervision system, to try to find those dispositions, it felt we would spend more time trying to get the contract up and going and really not provide anything, rather than having our folks that understand, already have access to those systems and be able to move quickly through it.
and that would probably be more expensive to contract it out. Plus, some of these, I'm sure, are still paper copies.
Yes, sir.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. I know that for the benefit of new folk, tell us who you are, and I'd be interested in knowing where such a sharp gentleman comes from, please.
Well, you know, now that I think about it, I didn't introduce myself, did I? I am Chris Barnett. I'm the executive director for the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles, and I hail from Liberty County, Georgia. The great state of Liberty County, Georgia.
You're a good
Yes.
man.
Well, there's some ruffians come out of there.
Yeah. Luckily, I grew up there before cell phones.
Right.
What about the 3 investigator positions? How many do you have now?
So currently we have 10 with a supervisor, and we'll have conversations as we go forward. But as y'all are aware, the offender population in Georgia is changing. It's changing much differently than it has in the past. While it continues to increase, it's increasing differently. We have far more individuals that are gang involved, multi-jurisdictional, long criminal histories, mental health, medical. All of this stuff makes it more difficult and time consuming to investigate all of that so that the board can make an informed decision. And so as we see it, again, the numbers may not reflect it, but the complex nature of the cases is mandating that we secure additional resources.
And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but how do most of the investigations go? Do you have people that go out and talk to victims and people in the criminal justice system, or is it done primarily online,
So,
or both?
yeah, so our criminal investigators are throughout the state, and they are actually making contact, face-to-face interviews, not only with offenders in the system, but sheriffs, chiefs of police, DAs, anyone that may have information regarding that individual, we want to grab a hold of so that the board can again make those informed clemency decisions.
And those investigators currently are assigned to a region like Post?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Department of Public Safety.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and distinguished representatives. My name is Billy Hitchens, and I'm honored to serve as Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. We did provide you with a chart, I think, that shows some pretty significant correlation between the number of troopers that are on the roadway and the number of fatalities that occur. Just look at that in your spare time, but we want to provide that to you. If you will, please turn to section 39 on the tracking sheet, and you'll see the Department of Public Safety's section, and we'll go through the governor's budget recommendations for amended 24. On line 39.4.2, field officers and services, you'll see an increase of $37,713 to reflect the $6,000 pay increase for the vacant law enforcement positions that will be filled in fiscal year 24. Next is a law enforcement training program that was implemented this fiscal year. On line 39.5.2, we support and appreciate the governor's $1.17 million recommendation. Now that we've had 6 months of expenses, we project this program will run short based on its current funding. Our graduation rate at Trooper School has improved, and based on our projections, these funds will make our program whole. We'd like to highlight that our 109th Trooper School experienced a 69% attrition rate, and the 115th is currently at 38%, will graduate in March. So we've made some pretty good strides there. Next, we support the governor's budget recommendation on line 39.6.2 for our motor carrier compliance division. For MCCD, the $5.17 million is to renew our weigh in motion hardware. This contract was originally executed with the Georgia Department of Transportation and was transferred to our agency in 2017. The weigh in motion system collects data for our commercial motor vehicles and our weigh stations. The system records the vehicle's measurements, weight, and axle spacing, and this data is reported to the U.S. and Georgia Department of Transportation. The weigh in motion system provides analytic data to support DOT's lifespans of our state's roads and bridges, their replacements, and may help determine what materials should be used. This system collected data for more than 39 million commercial vehicles this past year. For Amendment 24, our last program is the Office of Peer Support Services, line 39.7.2. This program started in 2019 with House Bill 703 from the 2018 legislative session. We are requesting $119,810 for this. This includes $30,000 for one post-critical incident seminar. The other $89,810 is for the one-time expenses associated with 4 positions recommended to be added in fiscal year 25 and 2 emotional support canines and all the respective equipment they will need. The work of this program is invaluable to the mental health and well-being of our DPS officers, as well as officers from our local public safety partners. In 2023, the Office of Peer Support Services staff made 5,787 contacts. They assist over 75 different local and state public safety partners by leading 98 group interventions. They conducted 431 therapy sessions, held 5 peer certification courses where 160 first responders became certified peer counselors, and hosted 4 post-critical incident seminars with over 90 attendees. As you can tell, this program and its staff brings much-needed training and assistance, as well as emotional and moral support for public safety individuals during some very stressful times in their lives. Finally, we moved our capital project funds for amended fiscal year 24. We support the $1.92 million recommendation to assist with funds already set aside to build a hangar behind our new headquarters. We've worked with GBA. We have a total estimated cost of $6 million to build and equip the new hangar. This will create efficiency for our request for services for specialty teams that are also on the same property as headquarters. Current hangars are located in Kennesaw, Albany, Perry, Reesville, Athens, and Augusta. Last, we're requesting $302,500 to cash fund the furniture, fixtures, and equipment needed for the new Oconee and Buckhead post. In closing, I want to leave you with this. I can assure you our troopers and officers do the selfless work of putting their lives on the line to protect our communities and keep each of us safe. I want to thank the governor and legislative body for giving them the praise they deserve even when no one is watching. I want to thank you everyone for their time this afternoon. I realize you have a full agenda, so I tried to keep this presentation as brief as possible, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions anyone may have.
Well, our friend from Liberty County has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence. I have a two-part question.
Yes, sir.
First part, Chairman might not let me have but one, so I'll cut it into two. But have you noticed or have you got any record of any difference in accidents or fatalities based on the increased weight that we passed?
No, sir. We don't have any data that shows that anything has increased or any more severity of any of that crashes we've worked. So there's no data out there that shows there's a trend going one way or the other.
Thank you. The second part is, I asked this question 20 years ago plus when I got here, and we were under strength then.
Yes, sir.
We remained under strength. Does not look like we're going too forward, but I think you told us your ratio was one of the lowest in the country. What have we got it down as to what the difference would be if we were up to strength with Georgia State Patrol?
Well, I think I understand your question. One of the charts that we have in our books shows the number of troopers associated with per 100,000, and currently Georgia's right around 8. The national average is 22, and I think we have to be fair to say that we're not necessarily comparing apples to apples. Some states have a state police that would encompass a state patrol GBI, but to get to that number, you're talking about I think it was 2,400 employees. So when you throw GBI, state patrol, motor carrier compliance together, you're talking about 1,300 people. So we're still very short when it comes to the average standard. We are making some strides. We're into December, we're at 820 troopers. So we're slowly moving in the right direction, but we're certainly not there yet.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Number 25.
Thank you, Chairman Hitchens. About the emotional support canines, you for two more canines and 4 positions. How many do we already have emotional support canines?
Yes, sir. We have 3 currently that are assigned with people over at the peer support, and they go all throughout the state and provide that emotional support to any group that needs it.
How about regular canine units? How many do we have of those?
47, I believe, is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
They do a totally different job.
Thank you.
And they have a wide variety of missions depending on the training each dog has received.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Everything from bite dog to drug dogs to
Bomb dogs, EOD.
EOD. I don't know whether you have any cadaver dogs or not.
No, sir. We don't
No.
have any cadaver dogs.
No. But in terms of aviation, for the primary reason you're moving is the headquarters, and that's just the headquarters for the aviation where all the maintenance is done in Kennesaw. Is the contract is about to expire, and they want more money for it, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
And if you move it where you want it to be, it'll be right behind your new headquarters complex where you can look out the window and see them. And, I don't know how many people know, but there are 2 aviation facilities in the state that work 24/7. The pilots actually sleep in the facility, and if something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, they get up and take to the air and go to wherever the problem is and resolve it. One in the north and one in the south part of the state. So
Yes, sir.
this is just to make certain that you have the capability. And since you've inherited the property there from the National Guard, it's very suitable, and it's in the governor's recommendation. So,
Yes, sir, that's true, and it also helps us with some of our special teams, like SWAT team.
SWAT.
Y'all helped us buy a medium-duty helicopter this past time, and it allowed them to jump right on a helicopter and be able to go anywhere in the state without having to stop for gas. So.
And a lot of people don't know, and I think the chairman was surprised last year. I guess it was Chairman England, but there were 100 counties in this state that have no SWAT capability. So if something happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they've got to get a SWAT team down there, and particularly with the new helicopter, you have the ability to load up some permanent SWAT team members in addition to the local ones that will respond. So you have the capability to deal with most anything.
Yes, sir, and we've seen a astronomical rise in the number of our SWAT calls. It's 82% from, I think it was 2018. We've had 199 SWAT calls this past year.
And for full disclosure, I was the Commissioner of Public Safety for 7 years and spent 43 years over there, and that's why, in full disclosure, he's my son. So it's the first time in the history that history of the state of Georgia, son has followed his father. So I don't want Mom to get mad at me. So.
When you started, you only didn't have cars, you used horses.
Yeah. And we got your used ones, didn't we? So, any questions? 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, thank you for being here. In 3962, the weigh-in motion and monitoring systems, presuming given that that's weighing some 39 million trucks, those are located on our interstates. And what's the lifespan of those systems?
It's approximately 5 years, which is very short, but I assume that because of what it's dealing with, the commercial vehicle is very heavy, that the lifespan does not last that long. It's about 5 to 7 years.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But the other part of it is for the economics of the state, it determines which trucks have to come in and be weighed specifically. If they don't have enough weight on there, they're allowed, they get a green light and continue to go on. So everybody don't have to go in like they used to and be weighed and take up time. And
That's great, and it also has some pretty advanced camera systems that allow the same thing. It looks at DOT numbers, checks that, and if it checks out, it lets them go on through. And so it provides some convenience for the people moving commerce in our state.
but it is expensive.
Yes, sir, very expensive.
Any further questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Post council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Ayers. I'm the Executive Director of the Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. With me is Chris Harvey, who is the Assistant Executive Director for Post as well. Our budget is, as you know, fairly simple. We do have 3 items. It can be found on page 60, beginning at line 3.9, 3.92. Provides funds for Georgia Post Resiliency Program previously funded by the Criminal Justice Coordinating Law Enforcement Training Grant in the amount of $161,750. Line 39.9.3, provide funds for 2 vehicles at the cost of $64,000. And line 39.9.4, provide funds for system maintenance support and onboarding for online gang and human trafficking training system at $35,000. Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, is
about
this
any of
resiliency
pro-
program, is that the one we flew up to Maryland to view, or
Yes, sir, it is, Mr. Chairman.
and it's been incorporated already?
Yes, sir, we are in year 3 of that, and as you know, having firsthand knowledge of the program, it's been wildly successful. We've got the program turned out to about 3,000 officers at this point in time. The interesting thing that it differs slightly from the peer-to-peer counseling, because this is designed to prepare an officer to sustain the rigors of a 30-year career, not so much dealing with after the tragedy, but before that happens.
And I saw the other day where the minimum standards for post are going to go up to over 700 hours.
That is our plan right now. We're somewhere between 700 to 800 hours right now. In fact, we're forming a committee of, I guess you would call, subject matter experts from not only GIPSTIC, but all the other 35 academies in the state to rewrite the curriculum. Basically, we're going to throw everything out the window, build a new program, and get Georgia in the 21st century.
How has that been received by local law enforcement agencies? I
Believe
know.
it, believe it or not, sir, they have been wildly supportive of it.
Well, that's good. I was worried that the number of hours and length of time it would take to get that would incur some economic deprivation on their budgets.
You might find this interesting. The sheriffs, when I first met with them, they were saying, well, we want this certification added, we want that certification added. And I told them, I said, well, you know, this is a lot like buying a car and you're adding aftermarket accessories to it, so the price is going to go up. And their response was, we're only going to do this once. Let's get it right. So I've been really excited to deal with both the chiefs and the sheriffs on this. I think we're in a position to finally make this happen. As you know, we're currently 50th in the nation.
Oh, in several areas, not just post-council. It's somewhere in 49th. Thanks for Mississippi, but
We're behind them now.
well, I was stunned the other day to find out the new program with regard to reading intervention for elementary school students is being based on a program that's been widely successful in Mississippi. And I always thought that, you know, Mississippi and Alabama kept us from being on the bottom of some of those things. So, but you know, if somebody's found a system that works, like apparently they have, that's great. It's any 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here today and your time. A couple of questions in regard to the resiliency training. Is Post statutorily authorized to provide training?
Yes. Post actually is an academy. There are 32 academies. Not only do we oversee all the academies, but we function as an academy. We do provide training.
Okay, the reason I asked the question is OGC 3587, and part of that is outlines the powers and duties of Post, of course, and the section gives you authority to certify and establish qualifications and authorize training of law enforcement at training schools, but it does not mention that Post being authorized to conduct the training. The reason I asked the question.
35.8-8 does in fact discuss that, and we are authorized to provide training and do so. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
And I probably shouldn't ask this. I have one that comes from a constituent in my district, and you probably know what it is. I've got a young police officer who's been a policeman for 4 years now, and apparently y'all did a survey of all the certified peace officers in the state, and he's a Samoan, which is, as I've looked into it, the only territory that we have, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam. Of all the territories, his is the only one that isn't eligible for post certification. And this young man spent 4 years in the United States Army and located in Pooler, and the chief thinks enough of him. They got about 65 officers that he's put him on administrative status. I've got a bill. I hadn't got it out yet, but I've heard from somebody that there might be some opposition to that bill, and I can't imagine why. I've already gone through it once with the troopers where When I was the commissioner, we had a boy that was born in Cuba to American parents, but he wasn't an American citizen, and he was prohibited from being a trooper because you had to be a natural-born American citizen, and he went to federal court, and they overturned it, and I didn't know whether we're gonna have to go that route or.
The short answer is, sir, there's 4 people in the state of Georgia that are affected by that are American Samoan.
Oh.
We've reached out to all 4 of those individuals as well as their agency heads, all of which have begun the process to start their citizenship. There was some confusion when they completed the application process many years ago, most of them. But right now, their agency heads are willing to keep them in non-sworn positions until such time as their citizenship is granted. We have been discussing the bill that I'm sure that you're referring to look at trying to
This would
make
just
that
says
somewhat
anybody who's a resident of a territory of the United States would be eligible, since the other 3 already are.
One of the things that we've looked at is if you're eligible to serve the United States military, then you should also be eligible to be a police officer.
And they
in
can
the
get
state of
theirs when they're in the Army, but I'm sure that he didn't predict that he was gonna get into law enforcement when he was there, because he could have done that, so.
The good news is all 4 of those individuals have started the process, and I've been checking on that, and they are making great strides toward getting that. I believe it'll be a quickly resolved issue.
Okay, thank you. 19,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like your bill, because waiting on citizenship, they might get to retire before they get certified. I mean, I think the chairman's bill might solve the problem. I can't understand how we have folk from Guam in the military willing to die for this country, and it's the United States territory, and then they come here and can't be a police officer. But forget that citizenship piece. That line is long and getting longer.
I could not agree with you more, sir.
it takes about 10 years now if you go through the normal process. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Okay, the Georgia Public Safety Training Center. Director couldn't come, huh? He sent somebody that actually does the work.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Cheryl Greathouse, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, and here on behalf of Director Wigginton today. Our changes or proposed budget changes amended FY '24 start on 39.10.2, where we're asking to provide funds for the Department of Administrative Services Administered Insurance Program. The cost of the program this year was more than was budgeted, and so this just true up that fee. 39.10.3, transfer funds from Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee for the School Safety, School Resource Officer training program. That program has been funded previously directly through CJCC as a grant, and this would just move that funding directly into the training center budget without going through CJCC. Yes.
How was that funded? That wasn't through VOCA, was it?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
How was that funded through, Oh, okay.
Jones, our fiscal.
I know Cindy.
Services Director. I apologize for not introducing her. Any other questions about school resource?
That's a busy training schedule right now with what's going on in the state, I'm sure. Yeah.
Sir, we're expanding the programs, we've got a rollout of new programs every month for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Are they doing that at the local academies too, or is it just at Gypstick?
No, sir, we're doing what we can at Gypstick, but we're also rolling some of that training out to the locals, like we're doing with use of force and, crisis intervention training.
Okay.
On 39.10.5, provide funds for rent at Pickens Academy location, that's $15,000. We've been there for 5 years. Previously, the agreement, required no funding for that, but this year, when it became time to, renegotiate or initiate the new contract, they requested out of the blue $15,000 that we weren't.
My understanding was they found out we were paying some rent in other places, and they decided they want to get in it.
Loved you much as you thought, didn't
Yeah.
It happens. The final item on our list for today is 39.10.6. It's to provide funds for pest control and fire emergency monitoring systems on the campus. As our campus has grown through funding from the legislature over the last few years, we've added multiple external buildings to the main academic complex. This allows us to ensure pest control at all of our buildings, as well as fire alarm monitoring at each of those facilities, as well, to protect the investment that we've made.
Y'all got a lot of pests down there?
Yes, sir.
I see several. You don't have a good fire monitoring system? I know all the fire base training in the firehouse are right there. And
Well, interestingly enough, sir, we had a fire monitoring system in the original building that was built, and over the years, it has become quite antiquated, but we've tried to keep dragging it along, and then the new buildings were not something we could integrate into that system, so we had to look at what our other options are to make sure we had fire coverage for each of the other buildings, and so that's why we're asking.
but the fire department there is 24/7, and
Yes, sir. We do
Okay.
have a fire department, and matter of fact, Friday, we had a brush fire, so we got to respond Friday, doing some training. We accidentally set the grass on fire, and so that turned out.
you? Training
That
center.
was a little adrenaline on Friday afternoon, but, we got some good exercise with the fire department.
This is not a drill.
what about this dispatcher training? I wrote it down in one of our meetings.
I think it's in, you can ask about it for sure.
I've got some handwritten notes here, and I guess you could speak to it. I've got down dispatcher training, 1.5 last year, and need another half this year for $291,000. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir. The program last year, the legislature passed the telephone CPR bill.
Right.
And so we were given funding for half a year because that bill went into effect January 1. We've hired 3 instructors as part of that program. We have implemented just this month the telephone CPR training requirement for both the basic mandate, and then we'll also offer it as a standalone training program for those dispatchers who have previously had their certification. Tied to that bill was also 10 hours, or an unset number of annual in-service training hours that post and the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority agreed to set at 10 hours. So this will also allow us to take some training on the road out to the regional areas for 911 operators as well, because they're so understaffed at this point that it's hard for them to travel all the way from site for all their training. We're also providing that some training on the online platform for that as well.
And I don't see any funding listed on here. Was that in last year's budget, or is that?
We asked for it last year. They gave us half a year's funding. I don't think that they were thinking about that we were gonna have to implement the program, so we started working on it in July. And so we had to hold off on hiring, a couple of the positions because we didn't have enough funding to be able to hire the positions and buy the equipment.
Well, I don't see a request on here for any money.
No, it was left off the, enhancement request, and OBBS was to bring it,
Unintentionally, or
I'm sorry,
it was left off unintentionally, or?
unintentionally, yes.
Okay.
How about a leading question.
Well, I've been through some of the budget hearings with the governor, and some of them get left off intentionally, and some of them get left off unintentionally, and so. Okay. So that's 291,000?
It's a big miss.
It is. Our Liberty County friend again.
No, it's not me. I know this love is flowing, but I didn't do that.
It might be flowing one way.
That was me, Mr. Chairman.
It was blinking on his too, number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
So, the previous presenter posed talked about their resiliency training, and I understand that y'all can do resiliency training too.
Yes, sir. At the time that program was first being looked at, where they went out of state and they were doing, I believe in Connecticut and New Jersey, we sent instructors along with the group that went, and actually myself and several other of our team sat through the first master instructor program for that, and since then we have been training other instructors in that program because we knew at some point it was going to most likely get implemented or integrated into the basic mandate training, because it's to prepare officers for how to survive the career they're taking on. So it's really designed to be pre-training. And so and it is one of the topics that's being discussed about adding it to the extended basic that's being currently discussed. And so we have instructors available to teach that program as it becomes integrated into that or as necessary otherwise.
So, I'm not in law enforcement, so do we need duplicative places offering the same training?
I would
Do we-
the answer to that is probably no.
Do we have that happening in other instances of other types of training? Do you know?
Yes, sir. I know of 2 other instances off the top of my head where that's happened.
Okay, thank you.
21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your comments. And following up with what Chairman Hatchett was saying in terms of gang and human trafficking training, do we currently have online courses for gang and human traffic training?
Yes, sir. We've had online training. I don't have the exact dates, but they've at least both been on there for over a year. One of them's been on a little bit longer than that. We've been actually offering online training through the training center since 2010, April 2010. And we currently offer approximately 70 courses through our online training platform.
What is the cost for that training, and who has access to it?
All public safety have access to the training through our system. The only costs are involved if they are public safety personnel who are employed by a private, military, or federal facility. So if it's, for example, a private college that has a police department, then by the law that we operate under, they pay a $15 per hour tuition. But that number is very minuscule in the overall numbers. And we have fire training programs on our online system, as well as 911, law enforcement, all aspects of public safety on our system.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members for your time.
Okay, Georgia Department of Corrections.
We go back to 19. Page 8 or 9?
8.
8.
We're going to start on page 26 of your tracking sheet. You all should have been given a copy of the presentation as well.
I think it's 8 on the tracking sheet.
8 on track.
It,
See, they done gave me the wrong notes already.
You were close, don't worry.
Close enough, right? It's already going downhill. All right, going to start at 19.1. That's going to be a statewide salary supplement. You can see that spans across all programs. It's the
You don't
one-time-
need to talk about the standard.
Good deal.
Whatever is universal that everybody's getting, that's a.
All right, yes, sir.
And I know you're getting extra, so, and
Appreciate
deservedly
that.
so.
We appreciate that. 19.1.2, it's in our administration budget. It's recruitment and advertising on workplace culture. And you'll see there that's to the tune of 6.1 million. How we're gonna get that is transfer 3.5 from offender management program and then increase funds at 2.5 to support that ongoing effort. As you all know, recruitment and retention is a steady priority of ours at the department, and you can probably see most of our commercials on social media and on TV. And so we're broadcasting that wide net to kind of support that program, and so we're asking for your favorable consideration in that 6.1 million. Just a brief note on that, you know, since we've been working on the culture and increase the jobs, the advertisement, we received over 300 or 700 more applications per month of COs that we're getting in per month. So that's a good increase that we're seeing, and so we're able to retain more people. We're actually netted about 670 more COs and CO technicians since November of 2022.
And I've followed it for years, but what's the current attrition rate?
Right now, we're at like 42%.
So 42% of the people you got now probably won't be with you next year.
Hopefully, we're going to try.
Well, that's just the way it's gone so far.
We've been
Hopefully, this
projecting-
will benefit you, but
Absolutely. We've been projecting down for the last 3 fiscal years, and I actually get that number for you here in just a second. We've been trending downward. FY 2022 was 47%. 2023 was 39%, and we're projected to be at 32%. So I told you wrong. That's 32%. Excuse me. Where we're projected to be by the end of this fiscal year. So we've been doing a good effort, and it's thanks to this body and the governor's recommendations at a steady increase that we've gotten over the past several years. But we're trending in the right direction for 2 consecutive years. Tracking number 19.2.2, detention centers.
hold on just a minute. Number 25.
Just to follow up to the question, where are you doing that advertising? What media, what mediums, however you want to say it?
So we're going across all. We hired a company to come in, so we're going across all programming media, mainstream media, on social media,
Okay.
on TV, text messaging, email blast. We're casting that net wide.
Okay. Thank you.
And I've seen it on TV in Savannah.
Yeah.
So
So it's been yielding good results for us so far.
number 12.
Thank you, Commissioner. I said a few things the other day in the full Appropriations Committee meeting, and I've got some concerns. I've been dealing with corrections for a lot of years, got a facility up in my home county. So I'm pretty close to a lot of this, and, we've got a situation that I'm concerned about, not just with the cell phones and the drones and all of this stuff, but most importantly, that we're at about half staff for correctional officers.
Yes.
At one time, prior to the pandemic, we actually ran work details out of Whitworth Center up there, and now we don't have enough guards to run them. Now, we've got some issues, and to me, it's a bigger issue. What are we going to have to do? I know that y'all have got programs of restructuring, trying to put a new face on things, but I'm trying to figure out, what do y'all really think the reason that we can't get applicants that will pass a background check that would consider making a career out of corrections? Is it the nature of the facilities? Is it too many movies in the past? Is it the culture of the folks who went to Sunday school too much that are in your care and custody? What is that? What's the purpose? I think the starting pay for COs is
$40,000.
$40,000.
Yes, sir.
And I understand we get into bumping ourselves to try to get people from one agency to another. We saw this with public safety for years, dealing with what local governments were paying as opposed to the state. We've rose those salaries up. But what do you really think, or your staff, what do y'all think a staggered system of salaries that it's going to take to get people involved? I hear what y'all said. I see that $6 million and all of that, which makes me wonder, well, if you took that 6 and you took so much more, how much more could we raise some salaries to these folks to get the salaries up there so that we'll actually have people who will want to make a career out of working in corrections?
So I think you're right. I think they have to have a livable wage, which I think we're getting there. We're steadily increasing the pay, and over the past several budget cycles, you all, according with the governor's office and this body, has done a tremendous job with that. What I would tell you is that what we're finding internally is that you got to create a culture where people want to come to work. You can't put a price tag on the job that those men and women do inside those walls. I said by far, they have the hardest job in law enforcement, period. They work in the most dangerous communities in the state of Georgia, period. And I don't think you could put a price tag on that. So yeah, they'd have to have a livable wage, but we also, as an organization, have to provide opportunities for training, promotional opportunities, and also create a workplace culture to where they want to come to work. They have to feel valued while they're there, but then also feel like they're a part of something bigger. And like I said in the joint session, it's very refreshing to hear the speaker's remarks at Eggs and Issues and the governor's remarks in the State of the State, where he's actually talking about correctional officers and troopers in the same sentence. I think once you have that calling, you're going to have those people that come out. That's going to be part of that 700 more applications that we're getting every month that want to be a part of something bigger. It's hard to put a price tag on this profession, and it's just not unique to Georgia. Everybody across the country is suffering when it comes to staffing, especially when you work in jails or prisons. But it's hard to put a price tag on a profession where you dealing with a lot of trauma. You're seeing a lot of trauma inside the walls. You're dealing with a highly gang and violent population, mental health population, getting bodily fluids thrown on you, getting assaulted. You can't put a price tag on that. So what we have to do is really create a culture and environment where it's a calling. People want to have to come do this job, and I think we're going to stay. And so part of that $6.1 million that you were talking about, we've self-funded most of that through vacancies. And so now we're seeing a net increase in our numbers, which we're asking for the funding to continue that, because we're making it in a place where people want to come to work. We're making it a profession where people want to do this job again. But it's going to take time. It's going to take a effort from all of us to make sure that happens.
At a starting salary at $40,000, do you think that it would be? And I know that if it wasn't recommended from OPB, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but is that something that we need to look at, that we need to start raising some salaries? I think we've got some language in here about having a extra level for COs, but what can we do?
I think definitely continue to take a look at salaries, but more importantly, I think over the off session, we went around the state talking about recruitment and retention, and we talked about the retirement bill. I think I'm not sure of that House bill number, but I think when it got dropped, correctional officers were left out of that bill. And I often tell the story that, our average length is about 32 years that we deal with our offenders. And so oftentimes we deal with the offenders 80% of their lives, but we get left out of the 80% of the bill, of the retirement bill. So that's one of the things I think we could take a look at as far as, again, that profession, raising that level of to where people want to come to work and do this job. Not only look at pay, but then also look at the benefits. And then internally, we can work on the culture.
25?
So right now, starting pay per CO is $40,000.
It's $40,000.
For FY '24. But for
Proposed,
FY
it'll
20,
be the 25, I'm sorry, it'll be 44.
44.6 will be
Yes.
proposed. Well, it's in that 25 minute recommended by the governor.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you still give the 10% increase to the military personnel that come on when they're first hired?
We do.
And I know that, what do you got, 10, 11,000 employees?
11,000 fully
7,000? Well, it used to be up to 10.
funded. It's 11,000 fully funded positions.
Okay, but how many of them are COs?
COs about 7,500.
And I probably shouldn't say this. I remember watching late night talk show back in about 1969 or 1970, and the Dick Cavett show, and Governor Maddox was on there, and Truman Capote, and we had a lot of violence in the Georgia prison system at that juncture, and Truman Capote got all over Governor Maddox about it and said, "What are you going to do to fix the violence in the Georgia prison system?" And he said, "We're going to continue to have violence until we start getting a better class of prisoner."
Correct.
And I think he really hit the nail on the head, and, you know, it's not a good place to work. Nobody wants to work in the jail. The juvenile justice people have the same problem. It's, you know, and I don't know how much it would cost, but if we had individual cells, I think it would cut down on a lot of the violence and problems. But there again, when you got 52,000 people that you got to house, that's a significant economic factor too. So.
And the new prison will be single-man cells, and we're seeing the benefits of that in places where we can have single-man dorms, single-man prisons, where violence is decreased, and it's a lot better to manage.
In addition to the technology.
In addition to the technology, yes, sir.
And I understand now, somebody told me the other day that you got 300 or 400 prisoners now that you've moved into the private prison system while you're doing some construction.
Yes, sir.
So how many is that?
400.
400?
Yes. And that's for our hardening projects that we have to do. We have about 2,800 beds offline statewide for hardening and renovations, and Autry being one of them.
Do you have to pay them extra for that?
We pay them per inmate.
Right.
It's already a contracted beds that we have.
Okay.
We just increase the
So-
funding to put more people in, temporarily put them in there until
Okay.
we
How long was that project, you think?
It's going to be several years because we're going to phase it
Okay.
in. We're going to do what we call try to dry dock some facilities or dry dock some dorms to do these much needed upgrades and repairs.
Number 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, good to see you, Commissioner. You won't face a friendlier committee than this one. This committee is supportive. But there are a few, not one or two, but there's some 800-pound gorillas in the room. And some questions, and we hear them. One of the big ones is, you've said that behind most crime is the illegal use of cell phones inside the prison. And I haven't gotten it plain yet, but the first question is, what's the plan to stop that? I'm fascinated by AI and all of this, and we can't cut phones off inside a confined prison. You know, how do we get there, and what's the plan on getting there? And secondly, your PR campaign, I think, is good for recruitment, but you also need a PR program for citizens because y'all don't have a good reputation out in the community. I think it's just as important that citizens of Georgia feel differently about you as it is to try and recruit, because the people you're trying to recruit are not getting a good story about you. And see, you don't have the fancy gear and the pretty cars, so you're not the face of law enforcement, even though you got a tough job. But you need to address your PR a little better. But tell me about what your plan is to get cell phones out of, not phone, just cut off the ability to communicate. Scares me when somebody can get $11 million out of an account sitting in jail and a contract to shoot somebody. Now, the only person got that kind of money on this committee is the chairman, but otherwise, so it just scares me knowing it. Tell me about that.
So two things. We got a short-term plan and a long-term plan to address cell phones, and I'll address the PR thing after that. Short-term plan is to integrate technology into our prisons to cut off the cell phones. We've increased shakedowns. We've gotten over 14,000 cell phones out of our prisons last fiscal year. This past fiscal year, we've increased how we do that. We increased shakedowns, utilizing technology, utilizing our investigative team, our K-9 team, and our local and law enforcement partners. So every resource at our disposal we use for that. And so the long-term plan is to lobby the FCC to allow the states to jam the cell phone signal. All the technology that we have in place, number one, it takes time to put in. We got to go in and retrofit a lot of these facilities to put that technology in, which takes time. And then it just goes from there. And then also on the short-term plan is there's technology out there where we can actually just take over the cellular network itself, so we can control the communication coming in and out of the prisons. And that's what's proposed, and also not in the amended budget to use some of that funding to do just that. But that's the short-term plan, and I guess the long-term plan is making sure that the FCC will allow the states to jam cell phones. They do it in 4 or 5 federal prisons right now. They're piloting that technology. It works. I know there was concerns of bleed over. I'm trying to get the data to see if they actually have that bleed over data from the 911 or emergency calls that they're saying, but the technology is out there. Congress would have to allow the states to do that. And on the PR plan, the information's out there. You know, I've sat down with multiple news media outlets, and they tell me directly to my face, well, good news stories don't sell. I have it. But we also put out a good message on our Facebook page. We put out a contact information that the families can reach out directly to us when they have an issue. My cell phone number is probably all out there on the internet. Everybody's already got it. But more importantly, we have that outlet. We help more families on a daily basis than you would ever imagine. But that story doesn't get told.
You need to tell it.
We do tell it, but no.
I hadn't heard it.
Well, that's why I have this. I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm telling you right now, there's not a day that goes by that the men and women at GDC don't help these families. What gets told out there on other Facebook platforms and in some of the mainstream media is that's not happening. That's not true. Some of the stories that are out there as well are fabricated. There's some truth to it, but then there's also things it's just false. And so we also play on that defense role, because our phones start ringing, and our team, we help. We have a call center, we have an ombudsman unit, and we have a dedicated person, not to mention the team that's behind me, that communicate with families on a daily basis, all on the middle of the night, holidays, weekends, it doesn't matter. We're communicating, getting people answers that they need.
Well, that's
And we're also looking at to expand that a little bit more. Of course, we're dealing with 50,000 offenders in our care. You can see how that call volume can kind of be a burden. But I can rest assured that we're very responsive when it comes to loved ones' needs. But then also cognizant of the fact that sometimes they can be manipulative too, in getting us to do things to benefit their loved one in a not so good way.
right.
Okay, we got a multitude of questions here. Number 15.
That's me. Help me understand, when you say private prisons, if you're paying them by the bed, if you don't have enough prisoners for them, how are they staying in business? What are other sources of income for a private prison?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speak on where their other source of income is. I know our contract, it goes for the beds.
Are they able to use those prisoners for other reasons? Are they able to contract out those prisoners for work or something like that? I'm just trying to figure out how they stay in business if we don't give them enough.
No, they can't contract. We don't send them out to contract so they can contract out like sublease prisoners. No, we don't. That's not.
Okay.
They're just a bed space for them to go. It's like another prison. We have 4 in the state, and they would just utilize their bed space.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how they stay in business if you don't send them enough prisoners.
Guess if we don't send them, they probably won't.
Yeah. You send a lot now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But let me say this too. I mean, I think and I know that's a hot topic, but our private prison vendors are a tremendous asset to us in needs like this. So, of course, this extra 400 we wouldn't have sent if we didn't have the need to retrofit and upgrade our facility. We wouldn't have to put that money in there. Our aging infrastructure is our biggest challenge at the Georgia Department of Corrections. So, if we didn't have to retrofit some of these facilities and take care of our aging infrastructure, we wouldn't need those additional 400 beds. Like I said, right now we have 2,800 state beds offline because we need to address our aging infrastructure. Once we put those beds back online, those 400 are coming back.
And that's why I'm asking the question, because when they come back, does that put their private prison out of business?
No, because we just increased the funding to put those 400 extra beds there while we retrofit those facilities. So they'll be back to the original level of inmates that they had prior to.
Thank you.
Number 12.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to dovetail off of some that my colleague from the coast brought up just a minute ago. First off, from everything that I know, the culture at corrections has changed so much. Of course, our whole world has changed so much with the advent of cell phones and technology. And it's not a good thing in a lot of ways. The gangs that we know about in the prisons today, this didn't just start. There's always been gangs. There's always been that tribe mentality, except it has gotten worse.
Correct.
And a lot of that's got to do with the communication network. It's not like the days that using the phone to call somebody a hardline phone was a privilege. All of a sudden, when they started, at one time it was cell phones were being smuggled in at a price tag of $1,000 a phone that the inmates would pay a guard. Well, those days are gone because now the drone technology, they're dropping these drones in. One of the things that my colleague had mentioned was about what are we going to do about this mobile cell phone technology. You know, to me, and from what I know and I suspect, that we've got a lot of criminals, gangs and otherwise, that are probably making a whole lot more money inside the gates of prison as long as they've got a cell phone to communicate.
That's true.
I deal with these constituents and the mamas that call me and how they're being hit up by cell phone calls from other inmates or from somebody that says, we're going to kill your son, or we're going to rape him, or we're going to do whatever if you don't send a green card or if you don't send a check or something like this. And, you know, this is part of the problem that's making it so difficult. First, I want to get on to this part about the mobile technology. You said something about FCC. One of the things the committee needs to know about, we've talked about it in this committee for years. You deal with the federal government is the biggest mistake you ever tried to do. If you're waiting on the federal government, you ain't gonna get nothing done. They can block a cell phone in a federal prison, but they won't let the states do it in their own prisons. Now, we've got technology that's out there. Is there any money, have y'all proposed any budgets to start doing something? I mean, I know that there's some technology that's been invented out there by some innovative companies to do the hard lining or the hard installation, do these blockers inside the prisons.
Yes.
And it's got to be done, and it's got to be blocked so the inmates can't tear up, because they can tear up an anvil with a pick handle.
Yeah.
But have y'all got any money in your budget, or y'all recommending any budget?
We do. In the amended, there's about $5.6 million in the amended budget to address technology issues for cell phone, drone technology, radar, and other avenues. So there's money in the budget for that. Yes, sir.
Is that enough for starting out? Because you've got 30, how many facilities?
35 state facilities. But it's enough because, like I said, the technology that we're looking at to actually take over the cellular network, that's the install time is going to take a while on that. And even with not only on the mobile assessments, even with the mobile assessments that you're talking about, that takes time as well to get that technology and get that hardware actually in the prisons to be able to do that. And so the funding that we have, that $5.6 million is a good start. I think we're going to probably have to continue to fund that moving forward, but it'll get us on a good start to be able to do that, implement that technology, because we have to retrofit most of those facilities to be able to accommodate that.
So $5.something million that y'all recommended in the supplemental will be a starting point for for the rest of this budget to get started on this. And how many facilities will that cover?
At least two facilities for Sailor.
Two of the roughest facilities, I'm presuming.
Yes.
So what would it take to do a broader?
It's $2 million per facility. But again, that takes time to get that, to procure that, and then get that technology in to complete that project before we go into another project.
So if the $5 million is a starting point for two facilities, this committee might be advised to start maybe looking at bumping that number so they can start looking at more facilities.
Yes.
As well as looking for pay raises and things like that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right.
Number 25.
Chairman Powell, you stole most all of my comments and points, but I'll piggyback on that and say, Commissioner, you've done a great job with the culture and getting the COs and your people staying and ready and wanting to work. We do have a piece of that puzzle when we're competing against Alabama, whose starting pay is at $52,000. I don't like to compare us to Alabama, but I just did.
Yeah.
And I know you got a couple of different systems to help harden these facilities against cell phones and other technology. I think if we're waiting on the FCC, I think FCC stands for Federal Communications. And, you know, the old saying, an act of Congress, we're not Congress.
Yes, sir.
And we want to help you.
Yes, sir.
And time is of the essence, and we want to get this done, so we're asking.
Yeah,
We want to help you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's why I said that was the long-term plan. You know, our short-term plan is to go ahead and implement this technology in here, but the long-term solution would be just to jam the signal and be done with it. That's the long-term solution, because I know that's going to take time. That's going to be a big hill to climb. But in our short-term solution, we've already implemented some of this managed access or cell phone jamming technology. I would say jamming, managed access technology inside some of our prisons now. Drone detection. So we have technology already in the prisons. Those other two facilities is just an addition to what we already got. If that makes sense.
Well, hit us with a plan to ramp that up.
We will. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Number 22.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. All three of y'all hit the points that I've been making. I've got prisons in my district, and I've had sheriffs and judicial folks show me pictures of drones that they've gotten and where they've had folks flown in from California to operate these things, put in jail. The prisoners, do they have access to email, computers, and that sort of thing too? You know, we've talked about the cell phones, but do they have access to those type things that they can communicate? Or I mean, I'm not familiar. I'm learning a lot about, you know, what goes on in a lot of these prisons. So they don't have access to that technology. We know they're getting the cell phones through whatever way, but all that's, they don't have access to that. But
Just the phones are inmate telephones they have access
Sure.
to, and some of the kiosks have video capability, but that's about it.
You know, you said a short-term fix, some of the things, but there's a lot of smart people on this committee. How, as we, as a state legislature, put pressure on the FCC to do, because this is very, very, very serious. I had no idea until I met with these folks of what's going on, and it looks like to me that's where we need to be. You shut these things down. You shut them down. They can't communicate.
That'll take care of I say all, but it'll take care of most of the issues.
So that's where our effort, in my opinion, should be. So that I'm gonna end it right there, because I do appreciate the conversation, because this is something we need to discuss.
It is.
Number 17.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for the improvements you've already made when you hit the ground running day one. Just to reiterate, nearly 700 additional COs just since last November, and the attrition rate that's trending down. And just to help you kind of answer some of these folks before me, I don't think we're going to change Congress, but the new technology, such as when I visited Phillips almost 9 years ago, they were one of the first. I can tell this committee of the stories you're hearing, you hear less out of Phillips up in Buford than you do Smith, Wilcox, Telfair, because they do have that technology. So it does work, and it's something that we don't have to wait on the FCC. And just to tell you that, because it's called managed, what do you call it?
Managed access.
Managed access, is that they're in nanoseconds tracking, so that the reason the FCC doesn't want it is because if there's a fire, they want the warden and other people to access out. With this managed access, as phone numbers are going out, they're intercepting them, and they already have the wardens and all the staff behind them, their cell phones, and they can be added almost instantaneously. And so the technology is there. We're starting with the $5 million, and I think you've already seen from this committee that you've got the support that as fast as these vendors can put them in, let's do it. And so I just, again, appreciate the work that you've done, and we've seen a lot of improvement. As Al said, maybe our constituents don't see it, but we see it, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the end of the questions on this one. Let's move on to the second item now.
All right. All right, let me go back. I kind of lost track of where I was at.
Just pick a place.
We're at detention centers. It's 19.2.2 is a correctional officer 3 rank is using existing funds to support that for additional promotional opportunities, and that's going to go into the food and farm operations of 19.3.2 as well. Next is our health contract. It's 19.4.2. It's recommended that increase funds, or a lot of funds, 65.2 million. The reason for the contributing factor to this is rising healthcare costs, it's medical staffing, inflation, and nursing, our aging population coupled with chronic illnesses, lifestyle choices. We're more advanced disease coming in. We're catching that, coming in at diagnostic, coming in, defensive medicine that we're providing once we catch those diseases, try to prevent some of that, and of course, some of the trauma treatment as well. Next up is our offender management at 19.5.2, and that's that transfer of those 3.5 million to support our ongoing recruitment and retention efforts. And our state prisons, 19.7.2, is our contract with TCSG. That's the statewide COLA increase at 172,000. And there you see at 19.7.3, which we spend a lot of time talking about, that $5.6 million for the expanded use of proven technology solutions to identify and eliminate contraband efficiently and improve safety and security within the facilities. 19.7.4 is radio communication contract. That's the administration fees associated with our upgrade for our radio system that you all funded some fiscal years back at $250,000. 19.7.5 offender call monitoring at $600,000 in the amended. You also see that going to be annualized. I know we're not talking about the big budget there, but it carries over. And that's what we're talking about, the wall phones. So as we getting these 14,000 plus cell phones out, we get this managed access with the support of you all getting that more technology in. We're going to need that funding to monitor calls at all the prisons. Right now, we don't have that funding to manage or to monitor those phone calls on the wall. And then
I thought you were monitoring all of them. You don't have that capability?
No, we don't have the funding for it. So we kind of picking. Right now, what we're doing is looking at the facilities that we have the most issues with, and then we're just cutting it off at one and then moving to the other. So this will allow us to monitor phone calls at all. So essentially, we are, but we just have to. It's not a constant thing. And then 19.7.6 in state prison, again, was a correctional officer 3 position that we previously talked about. 19.8.2, again, in transitional centers, that's correctional officer 3. 19.8.3 is operational cost for Metro Reentry Phase 4 at $4.6 million. We're going to be adding some additional funding, additional beds there to support our Metro Reentry facility or reinvestment facility right there at Metro. And right now for the amendment, that's going for to support the 92 staff members that we've already hired. We've already spent about 3.7 million of that funding that we're asking for so far. So that's just the cost for the amended. And then that's the net program overview for the amended is 86.2 million is what we're asking for your favorable consideration in funding. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the budget presentation.
Well, you did much better on the last 6 or 8 than you did the first one. But let me ask you about the Officer 3 rank. What period of time do they have in the Officer 3 that you're talking about implementing? What point do they get to that?
So after 12 months of being an Officer 2, CO2, they're eligible for Officer 3. And what we're finding out, some people don't want to go to that next sergeant level, but also people walking in the door, they want to see that career progression.
Sure.
And so it kind of serves as 2 purposes.
I always say that's what anchors people when,
it is.
Under the old merit system, people had the opportunity for about 15, 16 years to get pay raises. And once that went away, and before agencies started doing these Officer 1, 2, 3, a lot of the agencies do that now. There was nothing to look forward to. You got hired at a beginning salary, and if you didn't get promoted 20 years later, you were still making the same thing except for cost of living, and that that's been a detriment of state government. I mean, as far as attracting people and retaining them.
It has. It has. So it kind of gives them that career ladder when they can see the progression as they come into the door.
It gives you something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
I mean, and all of us look forward to something in life. It's any other questions? Oh, our friend.
Yes, sir. I've got to take the opportunity. I listened to Chairman Powell and Chairman Hatcher, and I remembered what an old football coach told me after I threw an interception. And he told me what not to do again, and he told me a hint to the wise is sufficient. I know the landscape, and I know how it is. I watched the former labor commissioner come before the Appropriations Committee year after year and say he didn't need any money and everything was rosy. And along came a pandemic, and he didn't have anything because he never asked. I would suggest, and I know it's tough, but if there's a system that's working good, then every system ought to have it. It's already proven itself over a 9-year period of time. You need to do, like the chairman said, cost it out. Here's what I need, and lay it out, because we're piecemealing and we're taking a bloody nose because of it. Alabama, 50th in everything. 52,000 to start, and you're competing against Alabama? I could see it. We were talking Massachusetts, but you're competing against Alabama, $12,000. A person just drive a little ways. They're the same legislators that about 10 years ago raised their pay to $50,000 while we were terrified to ask for $5. That doesn't say much for our guts. But I say you got to ask and let somebody tell you no. But you can't come here asking for a nickel when you need $1.
Yes, sir. And I agree, but I also just caution the body that I hate to say that. I talk to my counterparts in Alabama, and they're still facing staffing challenges too. So while they have to have a livable wage, I go back to you can't put a price tag on that. Do we need to continue to look at pay? Absolutely. I'm not going to say we don't need to, but I don't think that's the magic wand that's going to eliminate our vacancy rate.
Yeah, but you see a difference in when we first started out here a few years ago, you're paying $28,000 a year. There's a big difference, and money is the great emancipator, trust me.
It is. And I think people coming in the door now, when we ask them, they say, well, you guys raised the pay in the recent years, and that's the reason why we're getting some more applicants coming in the door. So we can still continue to keep our foot on the gas on that, but I just want to make sure my counterparts in Alabama are still facing some of the same similar issues that we're facing, even at that 50,000 mark.
Well, some of the issues are just inherent in the job.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
absolutely. But we still gotta keep our eye on that, though.
Number 15.
And it's human resources, 30 years. And what I've found is that you raise the pay, you get people in, and everybody else raises pay, so now the pay is the same. So pay is important, but it's not the deciding factor.
No.
What are others? Well, it's not even the deciding factor. I know people that take less money for a better working environment.
Absolutely.
And so what other things are you doing, or would you like to do, to help maintain your staff other than raising pay? Because it's going to take something else.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're doing. As part of that $6.1 million too, we're internally working on the culture. So we have some external partners coming into the department and helping us with that, along with the leadership team. So we're training every member of the Georgia Department of Corrections that we have on staff right now, about 7,500 employees, in what we call our culture partners. It's culture transformation. While the pay is good, they know what the pay is when they fill out the application. But we also want to create a culture and environment from us, from leadership, that way that they want to be there, they want to work. And then we also got to improve their conditions in which they work and making sure that they're safe. It's been proven that when we did it at certain facilities, and I'll just give a shout out to the team at our special management unit. When I first got here, we started that culture transformation there, and they had, I can't remember how many vacancies, but they had 50 vacancies. And they were able to fill those 50. And I told them, I said, if you fill those 50, I give you 20 more. I gave them 20 more positions. They fill those, gave them 20 more. When you go over there now, there's nowhere to park. You're parking on the grass out there. But one of the things when we talk to the staff over there, they're saying that they feel safe because they have, number one, they have more people. Number two, that the culture in which they work, the workplace culture that leadership provides, makes them want to continue to stay.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do this or not, but one of the things that I was head of HR for Pillsbury for a minute, and one of the things that we did was to set up benefit plans and give people options in the benefit plan. And, they would, we would have X amount of dollars or whatever it is that we allocated. And they were able to say, okay, I want to be able to pay for my child to go to college, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, whatever it is. And we would say, okay, well, we will put X amount of dollars in a account that you can build up over the years. If you're here for, 5 years, X amount of dollars goes into this account for you to be able to pay for whatever that was you wanted. And then it went, and then they had to stay to get it. So if they were trying to, buy a house or whatever it was, they couldn't do it if they left. So I don't know, are we allowed to do that kind of stuff?
I just told Representative Williams, and he agreed with me. The problem with that is we do everything universally in state government. If you do that in one agency, you got to do it in every agency, and the next thing you know,
every agency has.
You're in the $1 billion range.
Well, you really not really, because the way we did it, we just took money that we were giving them in pay raises instead of giving it to you in a pay raise, you got it over a period of time if you stayed. And probably, fast food is probably the worst, in terms of keeping people. But we went from like 100 and something % turnover to almost 30 by doing stuff like that. So it's just a thought.
Yeah. It'd be great if we could do it. I just, I'm not, I think I have a positive attitude, but I just don't see it happening. Is that wind you up?
That winds me up, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I just would like to say that I know you got a lot of questions and you were very diligent about hanging with us, and please don't take any of this negativity. Oh, no. We want to do whatever we can to help you. We know it's a tough job, and I can remember back when it was $27,000 a year and you were trying to get people, and
wasn't that long ago.
We appreciate what you've done and perseverance.
Well, thank you. And it's really not about.
We want to help as best we can.
Yeah, it's really about, again, like the men and women that work inside the walls, not just the correctional officers. You're talking about counselors, healthcare workers, everybody who works in those prisons by far have the toughest job, and they deserve the thanks. I'm just here to make sure I keep the lights on for them.
Well, I've been in and out of a lot of prisons across this state, and I don't think a lot of. That's where I met Al. That's where I met Al. But people have no sense of a correctional officer walking in a squad bay where you've got 70 prisoners down there, some of who have made weapons and have them in their back pocket, or they decide 20 of them at one time are going to jump a guard, and that's an unnerving position to be in, and everybody watches TV and they think everybody's in an individual cell, and you walk by and let one out at a time to go somewhere, and it's nothing like that. And it'd be great if it was, but the expense would just be horrific.
Can I say one thing?
No. Okay. Go ahead.
I promise I'm gonna leave. It's not like I want to stay, but I think we talked about like the trying to get that level up to for our officers. And I think one of the things too, and I know historically, and we've been trying to do this push on a national level from our association, but I think one way to start is recognizing them. I know it's been they're been called as guards, so to speak, but one of the things we're really trying to push is making sure they're recognized as officers. I think that's another way to get that the people into this profession, and not just going back to the old way of just calling them guards, because we're just not just sitting there guarding prisoners anymore.
It's a stigma too.
It's a stigma to it,
Yep.
And so I think if we continue to change that narrative to recognize them as officers, I think that also will go a long way in our.
Which is like in any agency, your employees are your best hiring agents.
Absolutely.
If they're happy and they tell other people it's a good job,
Yes.
they'll want to work there. But if they have that negativity about them, you don't want to work there.
There you go.
You have a tough time hiring people.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm hushing now. That's all I got.
well, we appreciate you and we appreciate what you do, and it takes a special kind of person to do that. So thank you. And I've served on some committees with you, and you do a great job. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you.
Juvenile justice. Is that AG outside? I thought.
I think I see him
I thought I saw some of his staff walk by him.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Shawanda Reynolds-Cobb. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Juvenile Justice, and I have with me our CFO, Mrs. Stephen Carter-Williams. So thank you for this opportunity to go over the AFY 2024 Governor's Recommendation. We're on page number 16. We will start with item 31.1.2. which is our community services budget, which is to replace ballistic vests in the amount of $124,000. And basically, our probation staff, they're required to wear their vests the entire time they're on their duty. And they've complained about how uncomfortable the vests are. And so we're simply trying to switch them out so that they're comfortable and they're safe the entire shift.
Is that with new vests or the old
Yes.
vests were?
The,
I know they've improved some, but none of them are comfortable.
So these are old, and so we have other law enforcement positions in the agency, and they have a better quality vest, so we would be moving to those. 31.1.3 is for laptop swivel stations in our vehicles. We have residential placement specialists that go out in the community to check on the youth, and this is just to allow them to be able to work from their cars. Line number 31.2.2, administration, is an electronic audit tool in the amount of $364,364. So we have what's called an Office of Continuous Improvement, and they audit all of our policies. What we want to be able to do is to use a tool that we can actually do trend analysis so we know what's working and what's not working. So to help us improve things like our policies, our training, and things of that nature. The next item that we have is 31.3.2, secure commitment YDCs, which is music studios at Eastman, Macon, Augusta, and Muskogee in the amount of $104,000. We currently have 2 already in our system, and what we've seen across the country is these studios do 2 things. One, they allow the youth to learn how to use the equipment, but I think more importantly, it gives them an opportunity to learn how to express themselves in a positive way. And if you're familiar with the youth in our system, you know there's a lot of anger and aggression. And so what we, with the groups and things and services we provide, we're trying to train them to do better with expressing themselves. So this will help us in that initiative. 31.3.3, the grievance system in the amount of $75,000. This will allow us to pilot a new grievance system. The grievances is a right of all of our young people. And so what an electronic system would do will allow us the opportunity to actually have transparency in the system. And so this is the reason why we would like to pilot one in a YDC and then one in a RYDC. 31.3.4 is the integration of electronic medical records in the amount of $266,257. And this is just to make that to automate that system so that it's more efficient and effective. 31.3.5 is to provide additional funds for body cameras in the amount of $395,384. So yes, we have CCTV systems already in all of our facilities. We call those the eyes of our facilities, but when there's an incident, and there are certain areas in the facility where you wouldn't have CCTV, this would allow the officers, when they're responding, to have a camera that's not a handheld camera, to actually record audio as well as to have the visual. We're going to move, because I've covered all of the things that's in 31.4. They're also in 31.3, so I'm going to move on to our capital projects.
Let me ask you this, provide funds for mobile tablets for a new pilot electronic grievance system and, Department of Juvenile Justice Secure Commitment, YDC, and one secure detention. Is that, for every inmate or?
So although we say tablet, we don't know which technology will actually be our solution. So it may not even necessarily be a tablet. And we would not necessarily be looking to provide one for each youth. It would just be enough to allow us to be able to record the grievances.
Well, I guess I understand anonymity, and they certainly, if they're filing a grievance against somebody, they probably don't want them to know who they are. But if you had one that had several, like a library, you don't know, unless you have a visual monitoring system, you don't know who's doing that anyway. So,
Right.
But, and the music thing, I understand trying to deal with aggression, but just how many of those jobs are there out there after you get out in the music business?
So I think the real goal isn't even necessarily for them
Jobs.
to be able to be employed. It's really for them to learn to deal and to express themselves in a different way.
Well, I know they're aggressive, and they're mad.
Yes.
There's a lot of anger.
Yes. So in line number 15, capital projects, what we have is additional facility maintenance and repairs in the amount of $2.3 million. And what we have is aging infrastructure. Some of our facilities were built in the early 60s, and they get a lot of wear and tear. And so we're doing things like having to replace roofs, doors, locks, and things of that nature. And line number 16 is to replace 43 vehicles. We run a transportation unit. We also have probation staff, and we have staff that are moving back and forth in between facilities. But with our transportation team, they're transporting youth to court, they're transporting youth between facilities, as well as their medical appointments. So this would just allow them to be on a safe vehicle while they're transporting our young people. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause.
We have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You look very kindly at me, and I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you sometimes.
Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for all you do. It's difficult. We've been talking about it even with the last, with the corrections department. It's just a different type of offender now. And it's difficult, especially with the age group you're dealing with. It's very expensive.
Yes.
It's mind-boggling. But I'm always looking for light at the end of the tunnel. Now, you've mentioned the music. I can see what you're talking about, some other things. But what are you trending? What are you seeing? Are you making a difference, or you just hold it until they age out?
So I do feel like we're making a difference. So we have young people that graduate from our school system each year. We also have young people that are currently enrolled in college already. We've gone out, myself as well as the executive team, to talk to our young people, to try to understand what's next, because not everybody wants to go to college. So what you will see is that even in the 2025 budget, we're looking at bringing welding, to mobile welding to some of our facilities. We're also working to bring more construction and trying to work with our young people to help them get more involved in that particular industry at a couple of our facilities. We have construction projects. So in Augusta, at Augusta YDC, for example, we have started engaging with the young people to help with the school that we're constructing, for them to be able to use some of their talents and skills in the classes that they're doing, to help put bookshelves and things like that. We're also, through reentry, we're working with different organizations to for them to employ young people when they leave us. So we are making some progress. Now, is that true with every kid? No. But with those that are willing, and if they're receptive to the programs that we are offering, and if we can get the family engagement, we can make good progress.
Okay, thank you.
Number 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Just to add to or follow up on what you were just mentioning in terms of welding classes, et cetera, are you working with a technical college system to do that? I noticed in the corrections budget, there's a line item for contracts with that, but I didn't see it in juvenile justice, so just checking to see if that's what you're utilizing in order to help educate some of those kids.
Yes, sir, we are.
And where are we in funding for that? Do you know?
I don't know what the funding is. What I can tell you with the welding is $600,000 for 3 of our campuses to do the welding. So hopefully that will be successful, and that will just be one other opportunity for us to help them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What's your cost per day per child that's in your system? Do you have any idea? Just an average? I asked that a couple of years ago, and what I want to do was the comparison between Department of Corrections, and because most people don't realize how much more you have to put into it with regard to education and health care and all the other things that are mandated that aren't mandated in the prison system. Last time, I think it was 5 times higher in juvenile justice than it was in the Department of Corrections. And
okay.
That's all right. I got out what I was going to.
Okay.
Okay.
For YDC is $1,066.29, and then for the RY is $455.39.
That's per day?
Yes.
How many people do you have in your system?
So right now we have a little over 1,000. We have about 1,100 people, 889 in our RYDCs, and then we have a little over 200 in our YDCs.
You know, and I don't know what's wrong with our society. When I first started in state government, we didn't have a Department of Juvenile Justice, and you know, you just see how expansive it's been and how many young people we're incarcerating now, which some people say it's not incarceration, but I think those that are in the system would say otherwise. And,
okay, what?
Any more questions? Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
I'm going to skip around a little bit and call the lawyer that represents me now, our Attorney General. So, his agency has saved me a couple times in my old job. So.
Chairman, thank you so much. Members of the committee, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about the amended fiscal year 24 budget, and using the track sheet that you have, we'll go down that list. 3311, increase of funds to provide a one-time $1,000 salary supplement for full-time employees for recruitment and retention in the amount of $292,808. And as you know, this is a statewide increase to pay.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but you don't have to go through the pay, everything that's universal.
You got it.
Right.
So 3312 is a recommendation for funding for the purchase of equipment and technology for the proposed organized retail crime and cybercrime prosecution unit in the amount of $103,500. And then 3313 is recommended funding to strengthen our cybersecurity and replace aging IT equipment. Under our plan, we'd utilize one-time funds to hire contract IT professionals to help us get caught up addressing network security needs, which would enhance the cybersecurity of the department. And we would also utilize these funds to refresh hardware technology throughout the department. And so 33, and then we'll go to the Medicaid fraud unit. 2.1 is universal, and then 33.2.2 is the transfer of funds from Medicaid fraud to the law program to help fund our ORC and cyber equipment needs and align with budget expenditures. So with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions you or the committee may have.
I don't think we have any with such a abbreviated ask, but I think everyone here appreciates what you're doing with gangs and welfare fraud, and certainly that's been expansive. And I know in my area, I think y'all and the investigators just arrested about 30 people down along the coast for in a very, very violent gang, and we certainly appreciate that. And it just seems like the gang issues, while they've been in prisons forever, they seem to proliferate here lately across the state, and they're dangerous. And we appreciate the action that you've taken that to assist in eliminating that. So,
well, thank you, Chairman. And I know one of the conversations I think Representative Williams and Mathis brought up was the issue of cell phones in prisons.
Yep.
That is an issue that must be addressed now. We are looking into that as well. There's not, again, I've said before, there's not a lot of things that are a matter of life and death. This may be one of them. Stopping violent crime and scams in our prisons. So we are working with the commissioner. We will work with you all. We will work with the governor. But this is an issue of utmost importance that must be addressed, and we are on board and we'll do what we need to do.
and I've been involved in some of it, and I just can't believe that the FCC has stonewalled us like they have. It's it's a national problem, and it does contribute to violence and violent crime, and it looked to me like they would be willing to bend enough to eliminate this problem. But they don't.
Well, we work with some of the attorney generals around the country to write a letter to them as well. I know that the commissioner and their national organization is looking at it. We certainly, it would be a big help if Congress would carve out the states to allow us to deal with this issue as we see fit. But in the meantime, again, we can't wait. We need to address this issue now, and we look forward to putting forth some ideas as well.
And I know you worked in Washington for a long time, so my feeling is you've got the wherewithal the knowledge to get this done better than most of us.
Well, with the gentleman to your right, too. He was up there as well.
Well, yeah, everything can't work out properly. So
we appreciate the committee's support, and thank you all for what you've done.
Well, yeah, we certainly appreciate what you do, and the way you're getting around the state and talking to everybody and making sure that they're aware of what you're doing, and that it's not stagnant. The gangs aren't running wild, and there's somebody working on it.
Thank you, sir.
And you and the GBI.
Great partners.
They are. And
incredible partners.
The cooperation with the sheriffs and the chiefs of police and everybody that's involved in this is essential to making it work. And I mean, everybody's said it a million times, but they don't stop at the county or city line. And they don't stop at the state line. Cooperation with other states is important too. And I know you do that. So.
Well, and I appreciate it is worth saying that there is something going on in Georgia now where we've got partnerships. Federal, state, and local law enforcement working together, addressing the issues that we are, and I think that's a great testament to our state and the leaders that we have at the various levels of law enforcement.
In the conference you had in Savannah, I was surprised at the number of federal agents that turned out from a variety of different federal agencies that are involved in law enforcement who were involved and anxious to help. So
we appreciate it.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the committee's time.
Reckon I'll just skip the GBI one more time. GBI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Chris Hosey, Director, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I'm joined today by our CFO, Ms. Connie Buck, and our Assistant Director, Scott Dutton. I will skip over for FY '24 amended. I'll skip over 30.1.1 at your recommendation, sir, and go down to 30.5.2, which provides funds for startup costs for 2 criminal intel analyst positions to support the criminal street gang database, which we've been working diligently on with training officers around the state as a pointer system in our gang investigations for all law enforcement. These are one-time startup costs, which include motor vehicles, portable radios, computers, phones, supplies, etc., just as an example on that. And that's the only item in our amended requests and recommendations. I'll go over to our capital projects for amended 24 real quick.
Let me ask you a question while I got you. What about your cold case unit? You know, I remember we funded that last year for the first time, and it escapes me about whether y'all got furniture or equipment that you need to run that unit. And it's not much of a unit if you don't have all the equipment that you need to do your job.
Right. Really, of course, we had 13 positions and agents that were provided last year. Greatly appreciated for that, and the support staff for it as well. I believe we have everything with the exception of some technology that we're needing as far as genetic genealogy, which we've utilized that once, I believe, over the past year in identifying a drowning victim that had gone unidentified, and then AI technology that we would be seeking also at some point, which utilized this past year, helped us solve an unsolved homicide from, I believe it was 2012. So that technology obviously would go into making that unit well-rounded. With everything else that we've got going on with that unit, building-wise, we're working on that. We're getting close to getting them in a home of their own. Yes.
Are they in your headquarters facility?
Currently, right now, utilizing what desk space we have there.
What about bodies in the morgue? I remember one time you were storing a lot of bodies that nobody claimed, and there was an effort to try and move them out. Has anything been done with that? Or?
Well, we're working on the mausoleum facility in Forsyth for unidentified remains, and we're almost finished with a project of renovating, getting it to the point that it needed to be respectable for those remains.
I just didn't know how you were able to keep that many bodies in your facility without interfering with the crime lab's activity with regard to forensic scientists and forensic physicians.
Well, in our headquarters lab, part of our capital projects involves expansions there in our headquarters lab to help accommodate exactly what you're talking about.
Any questions? Do you still want to go to the capital projects?
I'll go over that real quick with you, sir. The first part of that involves technology, enhancing our technology and replacing some outdated equipment around the agency. A robot upgrade for our explosive ordnance unit. That's $224,000 for an upgrade on those robots. We have 12 of those. We're about halfway through that fleet, getting them updated. Crime scene equipment for our crime scene specialists, which also includes mapping drones, which work in concert with our Leica scanning system so that they can map from the air with the drones on crime scenes. Ground penetrating radar as well. Furniture for our Millersville Region 6 office, which is the furniture there right now is 23 plus years old. In some of our renovations, our Region 2 General Investigative Office and our Columbus Crime Lab share space. And that goes back from a few years ago when we needed to relocate the Region 2 office, losing the office in Meriwether County. And that's $300,000 for an evidence storage facility there because they have outgrown the current storage facility. Our Crime Lab MEO building automation system, it is outdated. We're trying to avoid system failures, and if it happened, that would affect all of our HVAC and exterior lightings in the lab and medical examiner's office. A storage building at the training center that will be up on the hill right down below the prison next to the State Patrol, and we actually worked out with GSP and Gypstick on getting power and water, working together to get that run up the hill for power and water in those buildings. Headquarters main building cooling tower pump and motor replacement at $596,000. Trace evidence lab renovation at $250,000. And then at 50.1.14, provides additional funds, as I mentioned earlier, for design of the medical examiner's annex at headquarters, design of the HEO MA medical examiner office expansion, which is already underway. The additional $1.29 million would allow us to complete the design of that expansion of the headquarters medical examiner office. Previous bond funds, which consist of $1.4 million, have been spent. And then in the governor's FY25 recommendation, it includes $40.1 million for construction. And again, that would add additional autopsy tables in our headquarters crime lab, a decomp room, intake coolers to hold 25 decedents, which helps answer your question as well. Includes multi-purpose conference room, evidence decedent property storage space, and observation areas for that expansion. And that concludes our capital projects as well, sir.
And I took a group when I was chairman of Public Safety and Homeland Security over there one time to tour the facility, and I think most of them came away very, I guess, not impressed, but saddened by there were 5 people out there getting autopsies that day, and I would say that 4 of them looked to be under 25 that were drug cases, and, you know, a lot of people in our society have no concept. They know drugs is bad, but what an impact it is on our young people, and you know, 4 out of 5 just on that one particular day, and it's not something pretty to look at either. And but I appreciate it. And oh my gosh, here we go. You got a question now? You got another question?
Yeah, mine, I sure do. Thank you for being so democratic and gracious today. Mr. Director, good to have you. This is a little personal and special, but also I've been talking to the chairman about it, but the broader picture. In the transfer of money in Georgia, the Western Union has some pretty strong rules in place. 3 other main ones, Cash App, PayPal, and Zelle, are considered third party by the banks. Very little interior policing. It's a problem. And from a personal standpoint, I'll talk to you offline. But have you seen the need for maybe legislation that mirrors the Western Union requirements? Because, you know, there's just a lot of fraud and a lot of deception out there. And the technology makes it so simple now, in a flash of the eye with the third party.
It does. And that's just one mechanism by which we're seeing fraud take place or money being stolen from individuals, whether it's scams, online, telephone, whatever the case may be. Our cyber unit in Augusta does a great job in working with a lot of our federal partners in trying to assist in those kind of cases, if you will. Also educate as well, which is a big part of it. The problem with it a lot of times is by the time we get to it or it gets to us, it has reached the stage where we cannot retrieve it back. Even through the best means whatsoever that our cyber unit works with, it's too late to retrieve it back. We found the best success has come through education and getting that word out about avoiding scams. Some I know we can avoid, and a lot of the, I guess, potentially transfers you're referring to happen that way. But it's getting on top of it as quick as we can in order to track it. And even with that, a lot of the technology that's being used today by our bad guys out there, if you will, is very difficult to track due to the means by which they go through to accomplish their mission. And you're probably familiar with some of them that I'm talking about.
A little bit too much, but the problem's not over with the scammer, but it has to go through those third parties, and they have no responsibility. So they're not even hiding. They're in plain sight. That's my, but we'll talk some offline, and I would have talked to you earlier, but a very dear friend of mine who chairman had promised to put us together, but he's a busy man.
Well, please do. The key to it is us getting to it quicker. And a lot of times we have to go through certain means by which to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, and it slows us down sometimes.
Number 18.
That's me, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, I want to follow up on a question that I asked across the street in the general meeting, which is the issue of the backlog. We've been hearing about it for a long time. I know that efforts have been made to address it and to reduce it. Specifically, efforts have been made on sexual assault kits, but it's much broader than that. And my understanding is that any evidence that is in GBI's possession would be evidence that is relevant to either an investigation and/or a prosecution, which means that timeliness of testing matters. And in fact, timeliness could be the difference between another crime being prevented or not. And that's especially true in the sexual assault context. So I have a couple of questions, and the first is, what can we do to get to a rate that is much, or eliminate the backlog and just have the rate being that we're capable of testing evidence much more timely and contemporaneously with when the incidents are taking, or is that not possible?
I'm not going to say it's impossible. Personnel in our labs to be able to accomplish those testing would be of great benefit. I looked at a statistic earlier today to give you an example, which chemistry has been our biggest backlog, specifically in the drug identification section. And I want to say it's around 10 or so to 14 that we have in training right now. Once they're out of training, it's estimated that they'll complete about 7,200 cases per year per scientist. So that kind of gives you an idea of the benefit of keeping or having scientists working those positions within our lab, whether it's chemistry, firearms, whatever the case may be. Each obviously has a different amount of training time that is required to get them up and operational. But it's going to take that, plus within that, anytime that a prosecutor or an investigator comes to us with a priority case, we are pushing those cases ahead. Keep in mind, there's a lot of evidence, and just as an example, there may be secondary evidence, let's just say such as fingerprints, but there's other evidence that is associated with that case that's more important. Sometimes cases in our backlog exist of what I refer to as secondary evidence. There's better evidence to prosecute or arrest the person, and that's what they would be focusing on, if that makes sense. So I believe it's a combination of having the right personnel there and having that personnel there to work on these cases, to have the facilities in which to do that, but also we have good communication with our prosecutors and law enforcement partners around the state. And if there is one that needs to be pushed up as a priority, we're answering the calls on the priorities.
Okay.
To aid in the prosecution, as you're referring to.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess listening to that is that there's different categories of evidence, some by which you may have better evidence, and so the backlog isn't really a backlog. If that's true, what is the real size of the backlog? And what I mean is, what's the evidence that needs to be tested? Is there some that doesn't need to be tested? And what is the evidence that is holding up investigations or prosecutions now? What is the size of that, and how long to clear it?
The biggest backlog that we have, like I mentioned, is in our chemistry section. I believe followed by, I know firearms is one of them, and forensic biology. So in that order, chemistry, firearms, and forensic biology. But it's very difficult for me to categorize the importance of one over the other. It depends on the case itself and which piece of evidence brings more credibility to an arrest or prosecution. I've always given the comparison that it's very difficult to look at death investigations within our agency because you have homicides and you have naturals. What goes into working a homicide is much different than what goes into working a natural death or suicide. And a lot of this is the same way. If I'm working a major case and I have DNA evidence, it is likely more valuable to me than any latent lift that I have, any trace evidence that I've picked up, because it is going to be the most pointed that this is the person that committed the crime. A lot of what is in our chemistry section that is backlogged, like I've mentioned, is drug identification. And a lot of that has come from the inability for a police officer to qualify or quantify or identify, is a better word, marijuana on the street now because of hemp. So it's having to go to our labs to say this is hemp or this is marijuana. Now what is the quality of it, or what is the THC level in it? So then that adds to it. As I mentioned earlier last week, this is the first year in FY24 that we're pushing more evidence back out, or the results of evidence, than we are receiving. So what that tells me is by getting more crime lab scientists in, which we've had them coming out of training, that are addressing these cases, and within that, recognizing what is a priority and pushing it forward, and they're answering the priorities with that, and that's due to the leadership in the crime lab. That's how we'll get out of it. Will it be a quick getting out from under what we refer to as a backlog? Probably not. We'll probably always have one, but it's just a matter of continuing to work at it and prioritizing what needs to be put up for prosecution arrest.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one more, and this
Sure.
gets into the capital side. One of the concerns that I've had for a while has been how the state is preserving and maintaining DNA evidence and evidence that may need to be secured for a long period of time, making sure that it's not degraded, that it's kept in temperature control facilities, et cetera. I've had some conversations with local law enforcement, and I think that there's generally an interest and perhaps a state level solution for that, to make sure that it would be climate controlled, pest controlled, all those type of things. Because if we're going to make the commitment to secure this evidence, and I think that we should, because it does help solve crimes sometimes 10, 15, 20 years later, particularly murders and sexual assaults, how are we doing in terms of making sure that the evidence is maintained in its best form, so it's not degraded and it gives us the best chance to solve crimes in the long term?
Well, I won't be able to get into the very specifics of how it's done within our crime lab, other than to say I've toured all but one of our crime labs up to this point and looked at the storage facilities, the cold storage facilities, and the proper storage facility for not only DNA but all of our evidence. And it appears to be adequate for what we're needing right now, for what we are bringing in and what we are taking in. A project any larger than that, obviously, it would need to take another look. But for what we're bringing in, DNA, for example, we're doing with it and storing it the way that it should be.
But isn't it true that after testing, take for example sexual assault kits, it's sent back to the local agency, so it's not maintained in those same conditions?
That would be up to the individual department receiving it back.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Isn't it true that we put 17 new positions in the budget last year for the crime lab, and none of them eventually got funded? And I know that you all spend a lot of time recruiting, and I think you probably have a master's degree in biology or chemistry before you can even apply for those jobs. And it takes about 18 months to train somebody. And then there are other crime labs around here, including one from the federal government, that like to leech some of your trained personnel. So we just keep going around in circles. But I think you've seen it, and I'm glad to know that those 17 positions, and I think 4 more got put in with the governor's recommendation this year. But the criminal justice system just stops when you can't get the crime lab, and everybody watches TV now, and they think you can do DNA in 30 minutes and look at your screen and tell you where the guy is so that you can go get him. And but the honest to God truth is, and the judge knows this, when you strike a jury now, they have expectations from watching TV that you can do those kinds of things, when the truth is it's not realistic. And I just applaud you, and Representative Holcomb's done a tremendous job with regard to sexual assault and getting the backlog straightened out. And I I just wish we could do more. I don't know what it takes, but it just seems like good employees anywhere nowadays find it difficult. There's no anchor in the state government to keep them, and a forensic pathologist is another good one. I mean, everybody wants them, and we just don't pay enough to keep a lot of them. But I appreciate what you're doing.
But it's like Commissioner Oliver mentioned earlier, is we've got to give them an environment where they want to be. And it's like I mentioned earlier or last week, is we've got to find that one thing within our agency that makes us stand out and attracts medical examiners from across the country or scientists. And I think we're working towards that. And a lot of that is coming just through pure good leadership in our lab and our ME's
your fellowship
office.
program
That's right.
is great too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But I think most of the scientists are fairly happy with their job and what they do. I mean, they wouldn't have gone through school for all those years to learn that. It's just a matter with them of benefits.
And we're working on some recruitment and retention ideas too within the agency to keep people and attract more to the agency.
21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for being here today. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about the Macon Medical Examiner's Office? You know, how much money are we putting into repairing that, and or are there any plans in place for a new building in Macon?
We're looking at some ideas on it. The bond money for last year, the bonds were not sold to start the renovation or start the design, if you will, for the ME's office. Since I became director in August of this past year, and I look at Macon, there's definitely the need there for it. Right now, the lab is actually closed has been closed for 2 weeks. It's being closed for, we still like 2 more weeks for some repairs due to some moisture. We've identified where that came from, and they're working on making those repairs now. We estimate within 2 weeks they'll be back up and running. Had a good plan in place, though, knowing that it was coming, how to continue with the services that ME's office would provide. But as we look at that, what we see too is the services that are associated with the ME's office and the type of work that's being conducted by our agency and what is high crime in that area of the state as well. And that involves other services, for example, firearms and toxicology, which neither one of those are within that lab services right now. So we're looking at, from the standpoint of if we're going to approach the ME's office, approach the services that's helped support that ME's office as well, which again, specifically in that would be the toxicology. So we're estimating $3.1 million in design money for the ME's office and $3.1 million that would be needed in design money for the crime lab expansion to support those services as well. And doing them both at one time would actually save the state money by getting the designs done at the same time. So that's what we're really looking at and wanting to do down there. That's a very it services a very big part of the state.
Right.
And we got a doctor down for that lab or that ME's office last year who has been doing a great job. And then we've been having to send doctors down to help support. But again, with the ME's office program that we're doing with the fellowship and everything else, I'm confident that if we get that facility where it needs to be, we're going to put doctors in it with the approach that we're taking now across the state.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And just one other question, Mr. Chairman, if I might. The facility in Moultrie, is there any conversation? I know it's been closed for quite some time now.
It's actually open.
It is open.
Yes, sir.
It is being utilized currently?
Yes, sir.
What services are being utilized or being administered out of there?
Chemistry and biology, forensic biology. I believe is right.
No, they don't have an ME.
Yes.
Forensic biology and chemistry.
Okay.
It had an ME's office or was set up for one years ago, but I guess due to the shortage of doctors, that service was done away with, and they're utilizing that space in the forensic biology section right now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 26.
26. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question comes from an area that Chairman Hitchens hit on, and based in my experience as a prosecutor and judge, the marijuana cases. I know that the lab has been prioritizing what they're going to test for a long time, but it seems nowadays that prosecutors are not prosecuting any of the marijuana cases because they don't get lab results back. And that's really the only way they have to prove that what they have is marijuana. Am I correct in that? Am I hearing that correctly?
I think my experience would be it varies across the state and across prosecutors as to how that's going. I know that some local jurisdictions are pursuing the misdemeanor sides of the marijuana cases within, the courts, but it would vary. I'd have to really see and tell what the difference is across the state as to who's prosecuting what. But once that difference is made between whether it is hemp or marijuana, then there could be further testing required with it as well for the THC level in it.
Yeah, my concern is that you have certain people running for DA saying that they're not going to prosecute marijuana cases anymore.
I don't think it's a priority with many.
Okay, so it's not because of the crime lab not testing, it's just their policy that they're implementing.
I wouldn't know. I'd just, without being able to go back and look and see what's going on with the different prosecutors around the state, I just know that that's a large part of what our backlogs are with the drug identification, and it is taking longer to test that. So a lot of times they're waiting to find out if they're going to pursue prosecution on it before they will pursue any further testing on it.
Okay.
I think it's really a mixed match of what's going on when it comes to that.
Okay. I just don't want a de facto legalization of marijuana in the state. That's my concern.
And neither would I, but I think it's just a matter of different prosecutors, different ideas, maybe it's caseloads, whatever it may be, as to what kind of cases they're pursuing and not. But we'll test it if it's needed for trial.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I think at one time, didn't the crime lab discontinue identifying misdemeanor marijuana?
Yes, sir.
Because it wasn't getting prosecuted in most places, and they were able to have the roadside test back then. And since then, with the hemp, it's gotten so confusing. I think that probably a lot of them just given up on it because it tires down the system when you just got a little package of marijuana to take it in and get it identified when there's a whole lot more other things could be done. And I'm against marijuana too. I think it just leads to a lot of other negative behavior and health issues. So, number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for what y'all do. Been in the coroner business about 40 years, been in the funeral business about 50 years, so I know how difficult it is to when you're doing autopsies and you're trying to get blood alcohols and toxicologies and that sort of thing to get death certificates for family. And then I appreciate the fact that the governor and the General Assembly over the last few years has realized, getting loved ones back to families in a timely manner, and I know y'all have tried to do that. Representative Meeks asked a question or two that I had about the Macon Crime Lab. I live right there at it, right below it in Cochran. And then the Moultrie, I'm glad to hear that. I hope we get it back to where we can do autopsies there. It's just so helpful to everybody involved. It'll be helpful to families, to counties, everybody. But my main thing right here is they've asked some great questions, and I just want to say thank you. If there's anything that we can do to try to help it get better, I know if we could just invent a bunch of good doctors, that would really help us. I realize that, and some crime lab equipment that we've tried to add to, and hopefully that's got the backlog down. I do know we do have some problems, and we still do, but you're working at it, and I thank you. And I'm just glad that this committee and this legislature and governor is trying to help you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that's all we've got. Anybody else? We appreciate what you do, and I don't know how you did it, and it sometimes hurts my mouth to say laudatory thing, but I appreciate you. I don't know what you did to get your deputy commissioner back, but I appreciate that.
I'm still paying for it. Thank you very much.
Sure. Council of Accountability Court Judges. And I appreciate everybody waiting around. We just had a list, and I don't know how it was made up, but I knew this was going to be a long day, and I appreciate those of you here waiting around. Of course, some of you have some money at stake. But we're ready when you are.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm Kathy Goslin. I'm a Superior Court judge. I've been lucky enough to preside over a mental health court for almost 20 years now. I have with me the most important person because she has all the answers to all the questions you have. Taylor Jones is the Executive Director of the Council. As you know, the Council is charged with a framework for all the accountability courts in Georgia. Those are the courts in Superior Court, State Court, Juvenile Court. There are drug courts, mental health courts, veterans courts, DUI courts, and family treatment courts in Juvenile Court. And we do standards and certification. We do peer reviews. We do treatment for all those courts. The numbers have gone up, and Taylor can give you that statistic. But we're here just with one request today. So I'm going to let her do that, and then I'm available to answer questions as she is as well. Taylor?
Thank you, Judge. Before we really jump into the budget discussion, I did really just want to take a moment to recognize not only the judges, but our court coordinators, our case managers, our treatment providers, the prosecutors, the public defenders, the law enforcement officers, and the probation officers that work on a team to make accountability courts work for all Georgians. Without their dedicated service, which is a lot of times made up of extra duties or just volunteer work, these courts wouldn't work. So I just wanted to recognize them today as part of our opportunity to be before you. I also want to take an opportunity to thank the governor's office as well as this committee for their continued support for the often life-saving work that these courts get to do every day. Just to highlight a quick performance measure for you, you've got a copy of our annual report that we provided before the hearing started. But our courts are continuing to rebound from the pandemic. Last year, we served 269 more participants than they did in FY22. It's about a 4% increase in the number of people being served. Since fiscal year 13, between FY23, so that 10-year period, we've served over 34,000 Georgians through accountability court programs here in our state. Additionally, our data is already telling us for this current fiscal year, for quarter one that closed in September, that we were serving 4,791 participants. That can be compared to last year's number of 4,261. So already for this current fiscal year, we're serving 530 more people through our accountability court programs. So as Judge Goslin mentioned, we're here to really talk about line 30.7.2, and it's in the amount of $613,124, which provides funds for moral recognition therapy, which is MRT training, and MRT trauma training. Probably asking yourself, what is MRT trauma training and what is MRT? So I'm going to tell you. MRT therapy is the premier cognitive behavioral treatment program for offender populations. It was developed in 1985, and over 200 published outcome studies have documented that MRT-treated individuals show significantly lower recidivism rates, and it's delivered through a treatment provider who's trained in a 30-session group format. Additionally, the trauma-related curriculum for MRT is delivered in an 8-session format, and as we know, trauma-related issues pose some of the greatest stumbling blocks for recovery for those diagnosed with a substance use disorder or a mental illness. So again, line 30.7.2 in the amount of $613,124 provides funds for MRT. One quick thing to state as we start to wrap up is that our courts are continuing to be more cost effective through our analysis. For FY23, we know that for every one state dollar invested that we're saving $5.33. So thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today, and if there's any questions, we're happy to answer those.
I don't see any questions, but I've been to several accountability courts and gone to the graduations, and I'm from the Savannah area where we have a multitude, and I'm just, as in the name, making people accountable instead of finding them or putting them on probation and turning them loose to do whatever they want. I mean, I think that's just going going down the Primrose path, and to bring them back in and test them and be certain that they're doing what they're supposed to be. I just think that's a natural order of things, and I appreciate, and I know the judge probably was one when he was a Superior Court judge. So I've been impressed, and most people that I know that have watched it have been impressed with, and it's a very innovative idea to begin with, and I think it's dropped our recidivism rate significantly, and people go on to lead good lives and good family lives, and children divorces, and children are better cared for, and it's just been a great program. So
Thank you.
I'm on board.
Good to hear.
We got several here. 15, is that you?
Yes. And I really think that you guys are doing a great job too with these courts. But the question I have is when somebody graduates, especially if they have a drug addiction or something like that, and something happens in their life and they end up back on drugs or whatever, is there something, and once they've graduated, are you guys done with them, or can they come back and participate again, or how does that work?
So there are a couple ways that can work. For instance, in our circuit, we made sure that they were on probation for at least 6 months after they graduate to try to catch that, if that happens. And most of the accountability courts that I'm familiar with, including ours in our circuit, allow people to come back again. We definitely have had folks come back and do a second time, and that's been the charm. So.
Okay. Thank you.
And after the fact, do they provide information about mental health issues in the future? Should they have them, or just to return back if they have a problem?
Yeah, they can return back, or we have good relationships with our CSB, for instance, and can offer that.
And to add to the judge's comments, a lot of times courts will offer aftercare programs to keep them engaged. And one of the things that you really want to try and teach an accountability court participant is the resources that they need in the community to maintain that sobriety. So they're not leaving the program without any resources or support. And then, as Judge said, if there's a need for them to come back in and it's allowed by that court, they have that opportunity.
26.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my time as a judge, serving as a drug court judge and a mental health court judge, that was some of the best work I ever did. And this is the best bang for our money in these courts right here in our criminal justice system, and I appreciate what y'all do.
Thank you.
Number 18.
That's me. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the benefits, but I'm curious as to, can you describe for us the methodology that's used to examine and test the efficacy of what we're doing? Like, how is that done, and how often is it done?
Well, when we did the cost saving, tell them about that.
Well, we do a cost savings analysis in terms of looking at the benefit of how much money is being invested and how much you're getting out on return. And we've done that work through the Carl Vinson Institute of Government, but we do work with Applied Research Services for recidivism studies.
Recidivism.
So a third party, and we do that about every 3 years. Our most recent one was done in 2022. And it looked at about 28,000 participants that came through our courts here in Georgia. It was actually 28,600. The data that we collected between 2016 and 2021. So we try and repeat that study every 3 years, and we do it at the state level. So we're looking at the state level recidivism rates, but we also do it per court. So those courts have that information. So we do that type of work, and then we're collecting data. It's about 140 pieces of data every quarter that are coming to us as part of certification and state standards that we're required to do. So we're producing reports like this, and then we're also giving reports, we call them the quarterly program report, back to each program so they can look at their data to determine how they can make program adjustments to improve outcomes, improve eligibility criteria for someone coming into the program. So that's an ongoing process. Part of self-evaluation as well as state-level evaluation is quarterly and annually. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Whenever we get numbers of it saves a lot, that's interesting, but what's more interesting is what is the math that's getting us there, and what are the variables that are being examined, and how is it being calculated. I'm actually interested in those and understand the math. So, but with that, too, is I know a lot of these courts are fairly new, and so just to test them over time and to also test them within respective jurisdictions, because they may be different in terms of outcomes than overall state level, would be interesting to see. But I do see a commitment to the data and research. I just want to really understand how it's being calculated.
We could always get Rachel, Rachel Meyer, who's our data person there, to talk to you about it, because they collect an enormous amount of data. We all keep a lot of data over time, and so there's a lot there.
Okay, thanks.
That's all we have. We certainly appreciate you coming and certainly appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How about CJCC? You don't have anything? Well, I just saw you back there, and since your budget comes up, well, I saw you come under the GBI's budget, so I thought I'd skipped over you. That's why I came back. But we'll get back to the list. And I saw the lady stand up for the Georgia Public Defenders Council. I wasn't trying to skip over you. I thought I'd skipped over them.
I heard him mumble he was going to ignore you.
Wasn't anybody talking to you?
Well, to introduce myself, I'm Natalie Glazier. I'm the General Counsel for the Georgia Public Defender Council, and I have with me Terry Rayford, who's our Chief Financial Officer. And it's my privilege to present to you on behalf of our Executive Director, Ms. Omatayo Ali. I want to thank you, Chairman Hitchens, and for all the members of the subcommittee for your time and attention to our agency. I believe that we are on page 19 of your tracking sheet, but in addition to what's been included by the governor, we're asking for 2 additional items, which should be in the packet that we just passed out. The first is to provide funding for defense counsel in all of the gang and RICO indictments across the state. This is a type of cost that we're not able to anticipate ahead of time because we never know when these cases will arise or how many co-defendants there will be. I have a list currently. We have gang and RICO cases in a number of circuits, including the Northern Circuit, Griffin, Atlanta, Augusta, Piedmont, South Georgia, Macon, Talladega, Coweta, Rome, DeKalb, and Waycross. These range in the number of co-defendants from 15 co-defendants up to 70 or so. In these cases, our circuit offices can take one of the co-defendants in order to manage the cases most effectively. We try to have our circuit office take the most complex or the most serious of the co-defendants. Then we have a conflict office that can take one, and we also have a specialized unit out of Atlanta that can send help to take a case as well. But still, that leaves the remainder of those cases that need to have conflict counsel, and we utilize our independent private contractors for conflict counsel. So in a case where there's 60-some co-defendants, if we have to contract out about 58 of those, that ends up costing around $500,000 just on one case. And so that is why this can get, exorbitant in its pricing. We have a total that we're requesting just for that funding in the amended budget for $5,712,582. I want you to know that we're being as cost-effective as possible when we're utilizing these private
Did you
contractors.
give me that number again?
Yes. It's $5,712,582.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Is it necessary that each one have an individual? I know some of them are tried together. In that case, wouldn't one counsel, or they both have to have an individual counsel?
We try. The problem is that when we get deep into a RICO case, there are unanticipated conflicts that can arise if we try to give an attorney to 2 co-defendants thinking that they have the same defense, and then down the road they end up having conflicting defenses. Then that attorney can't represent either, and we have to go hire another one. So because of the way we get discovery and how long it takes, it's most effective to get the attorneys to the clients as fast as possible. And so by giving them each their own attorney, it's just the best way that we can think of to get it handled.
Don't some of the prosecutors prosecute more than one, though? It's, there's a pretty good time lapse sometimes between the first case that's prosecuted when you have 40 or 50 and the last case that's prosecuted. And I've seen in district attorney's offices where one of the attorneys will handle one early on, then he comes back and
we can definitely handle that. Like, it does help when cases aren't indicted together. Like, if they choose to indict one person and then others in a separate indictment, then we can handle it differently ourselves. It's when there's one prosecutor and all of these co-defendants and we have a hard time differentiating how they're going to be tried eventually that we have to, on the front end, get them all an attorney.
And I'm all for treating everybody fairly, but boy, you have 50 being prosecuted with 50 different attorneys. I mean, we're starting to talk about a little bit of money.
Yeah, I agree. So like I said, we're trying to be as cost effective as possible. So what we can control is we do pay a flat fee rather than we don't pay travel or any kind of, hourly or anything for ancillary costs like investigators. We only pay the one fee one time per attorney per case. At the joint hearing, we were asked about our policy in regards to cases where the trial lasts over a month, and I did want to clarify that the YSL case is the only time that has happened where a trial has lasted longer than a month. Usually we just pay that flat fee, which would include all of the pre-trial work that goes into it, as well as the first full month of trial. It's only after you get past that month of trial that we get into paying $5,000 per month per attorney. And that is capped at $55,000 as well. I believe there might have been kind of a suggestion that defense attorneys might be incentivized to continue a trial longer than a month. We don't find that to be the case, mostly because our attorneys would complain that they're having to shut down their private practices and be in the courtrooms all day, every day for that amount of time. So we're hoping that that's an unusual circumstance in the YSL case and that doesn't happen again. Again, that is something that was not completely within our control. I know Representative Ballinger had asked about the number of pleas that we have versus trials, and I haven't been able to pull those numbers yet, but I did just want to acknowledge that we are looking into that. A lot of these cases are ongoing, and so we're still looking at what stage of the case they're in and how many have pled and how many are still on board to go to trial. Some cases, they haven't even arrested part of the co-defendants for the indictment, so we're still looking at those numbers.
And that was kind of my question too, is what if they plead out? How much do they get paid then?
Yeah, they're just paid the one number no matter what happens.
75?
It's $7,500. So, if they plead the next day, they get $7,500. If it's 2 months later, they get $7,500. So that's the big chunk of money that we're asking for. The number two thing is the $228,954 or $941,536. That is towards a centralized juvenile conflict division. We're not using the word juvenile anymore, but our youth conflict division. We had a juvenile grant that had helped us identify what our needs are for our conflict division, and we're just trying to continue carrying out the needs that grant pointed out for us. We have a centralized person at the central office that is handling conflict cases around the state, as well as coordinating the contracts that go out for those youth cases, including the gang and RICO cases that involve youth participants that need representation, and SB 440 cases, and making sure we have a central training person as well. So that money would go towards having that conflict youth division.
And I don't see that on my tracking sheet either. Would you mind giving me that number again?
It is not on the tracking sheet. That's part of the packet that we're requesting as
Right.
well. So those are the two things that are outside of the governor's budget that we're requesting.
Okay. Well, we got it on in your folder. Any? Representative Williams.
Thank you. Thank you all for what you do. I do realize that justice is not only blind, she's expensive. She does not come to court with her eye on the clock. And it is vitally important because the heavy hitters that we catch with huge resources that you confiscate and who still have enough money to hire great lawyers should not be in the position of getting off because their counterparts could not hire a lawyer. The Constitution guarantees everybody gets a shot. And based on what I've been told by good lawyers, $5,000 a month is bargain basement because it's closer to that a day for a good lawyer. Thank you.
Number 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just weigh in on that too, because it seemed to me that in the general appropriations meeting, there was a sense that we're overpaying, and I don't think that's the case at all. If you were to bill at $250, that would be 300 or 30 hours for $7,500. If you billed at 300, that's 25 hours. And my guess is they're doing that work maybe even more. Plus, the state gets certainty of an absolute fixed sum. And I won't describe my billable rate, but I can state with absolute certainty that $5,000 for a month is nuts. Like we are getting a bargain there, and especially if you're in trial, because you are going to put in a significant amount of money, and I can't imagine there being an incentive for a defense lawyer to extend it and try to get another month. Instead, they'd probably want to try to get a resolution as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to weigh in on there, coupled with hopefully this is just an outlier of a very, very large case. It may or may not be, but if it is, then these things happen sometimes.
And I think there was a misunderstanding at the when we were in last week when the director made the statement, because somebody came back with some clarification, and everybody then was much better informed and understood. So thank you. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had some quick questions about the $5.7 million for the conflict RICO case funding. Exactly how many cases is this?
I don't have a breakdown of exactly how many. We have the numbers as far as around how many have been in each that we've had so far, but I don't believe we've got the. Ms. Rayford's telling me she thinks it's about 560 cases, but I can pull that information and get it to you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Also, with regards to the 7,500, just upon a motion, an entry of appearance motion, I mean, does that include, like, I don't know, they used to call them read and pleads whenever they would go in, and they would just basically, read them their rights and kind of sit with them while they pled guilty. The attorney might spend 2 or 3 hours max. Do they still get that $7,500? That's correct.
It is correct. We're hoping that we are not employing attorneys that would not be going through with the full representation of our clients, and we do try to get feedback as far as the contractors that we get complaints about. We no longer work with them depending on what kind of feedback we're getting, but yes, you do get that full amount no matter what.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to kind of, and with regards to the supervision of the contract lawyers, who handles those at the public defender's office?
We don't supervise the contractors since they're not employees, they're independent contractors. So we have a set contract that we provide, and we have a division that sends out those contracts, but we don't supervise their work as though they were employees. We, treat them as though the client hired this attorney.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, thank you. Also, obviously the pay that we've the salaried employees that we've done, it seems like we're kind of getting into a bidding war between you and the Prosecuting Attorneys Council with regards to pay. Do we see kind of an end in sight with regards to that? I mean, I remember, I've been around for a long time. I remember when ADA started out at $28,500, way back in the day. But I'm probably dating myself then. I think you were probably around, Bill, down back then. But
I was just a youngster back then.
You and me were the only ones around such a long time ago. But it seems like the pay has obviously increased substantially since then. Obviously, the cost of living has increased. A lot of things have gone up. Can you speak a little bit to, like what your turnover rate was then versus your turnover rate now versus kind of where we kind of turning ourselves into kind of betting against ourselves to a certain degree as the state who funds both prosecuting attorneys and the defense lawyers. I know whenever Representative Gunter, Chairman Gunter, carried that bill, he was told that it was already funded, but it seems like there's kind of a bit of a race at this point. And to my mind, kind of a race to the bottom. yeah, can you speak a little bit to that as far as the efficacy of those raises?
Sure. I know for certain that our agency does not want to be in a bidding war with PAC. In fact, we do want to have parity with them and have all the attorneys should be paid equitable. I think it's both of our agencies' desire to be paid as high as we can, you know, with our market value compared to private attorneys, because we do have the best attorneys, the best criminal defense attorneys in the state. And so, you know, we're very proud of the work that we've done to get that salary up, and for, you know, the support that we've had from the House and the Senate on that. But no, our intention is not to compete with PAC, it's to try to get in the same range. I know that our vacancy rate has drastically dropped recently. I don't know if you've got the... We're underneath 10% now, I believe, and we had been over that before. I just got back from, I spent last week in Brasstown doing our new lawyer training, which was about 50 or 60 new lawyers that we have just hired right out of law school. And I will tell you, the feedback I got from them was incredible about how they wouldn't have come on except for that they had heard about all of the momentum behind the agency that has been gotten from the government lately, and that they feel like they're being appreciated and valued. So I did get a lot of positive feedback from that. I think that our executive director has tried to move the funds in our agency towards providing the best entry salary by doing things, consolidating positions. I think that our future, we're looking at trying to get our APDs ones up to being in the $90,000 range in order to be competitive with county salaries, such as Fulton County, that's able to start our public defenders at a higher salary. We'd like the state to be competitive with that, but we also understand that we have come a long way in the last 4 years. So we're just very appreciative of where we're at now, and yeah, I think that's and I do believe it's helping a lot with us being able to recruit and retain attorneys.
So you see it kind of tapering off at 90,000.
I think that's our goal, is that we're trying to move towards entry-level salary being in the early 90s.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you know if PAC has any aspirations for that?
I would imagine they'd have the same desire.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We tried hard to keep you even with the prosecutors. I mean, in the interest of equity, it's
Absolutely. And
we
really
only see it
appreciate
as fair. It's so. Number 22.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I was out just a minute ago. I noticed on your handout, it says 8.2 million Georgians and then 44. What is that possible?
I think it might have just been for the PowerPoint presentation to go through the number of Georgians there are, the number of circuits, the population we serve.
Okay, I was just curious.
No, they're not all incarcerated.
I'm sorry.
We don't know who could fund that. Is that all the questions? Okay, we certainly appreciate you. I see him sitting back there watching me diligently, our Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council representative, director.
Yes, sir.
And I feel bad for you staying when I look at what you're asking for.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, representatives, for allowing me to be here today. It's pretty straightforward. In the budget, in the amended budget, I asked for 2 vehicles. What we do is we have, just to give you a background of what we do, we test and certify all firefighters, fire inspectors, everything in the state of Georgia. We are the testing and certifying agency for that fire service throughout the state of Georgia. There are roughly 582 fire departments in the state of Georgia, over 3,500 fire stations in the state of Georgia, and roughly 29,000 fire personnel in the state of Georgia on one level or another. We're a 10-person agency right now. I have done I think a decent job over the last 2 years that I've been here, almost 2 years, and consolidating some positions to try to get more, as mentioned earlier, bang for the buck as we move forward. And so I've been doing that greatly. Obviously, in the next budget, I'm asking for some more people, but I understand this is just the amended budget, and I asked for 2 vehicles, and I can do the job with 1 vehicle and 1 computer bank. That's not what I'm here for. I think I hope you don't hear that often, but I'm not asking for the 2 back, and I'm not asking for 2 computer banks back. Let me tell you real quick what the computer banks are. We have our online testing. I think last year when I was in here, I talked to you about our online testing platform. We went up and running in the end of May of last year, and since the end of May up until now, we have had over 60, or somewhere around 6,300 individual tests done for fire service personnel through the state of Georgia, through the ACADIS platform that we now have. And so it's an incredible platform, and I appreciate y'all's diligence to make sure that stays in our budget, the upkeep of it and everything, and the license of it. So thank you very much for that, because it's made a big difference. I think we've even noticed that it's made a big difference in the test scores for firefighters, which hopefully will help with recruitment and retention and throughout the state of Georgia in the fire service, because it's tough. I mean, it's tough. I've been in the fire service for right at 39 years now, and it's tough to find people, especially volunteers. Even though I was a career firefighter, it's tough to find people to volunteer for anything nowadays, much less running and burning buildings. And so we want to try to help them get up and going. There's some other things in the future that I'll talk to you guys about as far as recruitment and retention goes, and some things that I need fixing. But right now I'm asking for one vehicle, and it looks like you have that in the budget, but it really what was done through the governor's recommendation is a K5 sedan, Kia K5 sedan. And I will just tell you, the problem with that is that my people carry around a computer bank, which is a big carrying case. They have a charging station at their house. So I have four safety and compliance specialists that have a computer charging station at their home. They actually charge it with their own electricity to keep the computers up and running, so that when they go out and test, they'll have computers that are charged, ready to go. And then they have a carry case that has to fit within the car. They also have all kind of paperwork as they go out and test, do site reviews to check for the training records throughout the state of Georgia. And again, you're talking about 29,000 individual training records to check. And they have all of that stuff in their cars. And nobody can get it in a K5 sedan. So I'm just asking to consider putting the $40,000 for the Kia Sorento back in there. I had asked for two vehicles at a $90,000 because the Sorento is roughly $40,000, and then $5,000 would be for the extra fuel and upkeep of the car for the year. And then the computer bank, again, I've heard the numbers that have been asked for all day. And so we could, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good in roughly saying all I'm asking for is roughly $15,000 put back in my amended budget. We could round it up to 20, and I can promise you I'll take that extra money and buy more computers with it so we can do more testing throughout the state of Georgia. I have plenty of, I have not plenty, but I have several compliance specialists that could use a few more computers in their command to go out and do testing online. So that's really what I'm asking for.
And I appreciate you sitting back there for 3 hours,
Yes, sir.
waiting to say those few words.
Yes, sir.
You know, I used to be the Homeland Security Director, and I hadn't been involved with the fire service prior to that. And one of the things that I was astonished by when I first got into it was that about 70% of the firefighters in the county I live in, the majority of them are volunteers. And I don't know how you run those people down to get them tested all the time. It's
Right.
Because they all
And
have
it
jobs.
is a challenge. Yes, sir, it is a
Yeah.
challenge. I will tell you that the numbers are flip-flopping in the state of Georgia and really throughout the nation in volunteers. It used to be 70-30 volunteers to career. Those numbers are flopping now. In fact, I would dare say there's more career firefighters now than there are volunteers, because they're hard to come by.
And that was in 2002.
Yes, sir.
But,
Yes, sir.
And I see it in our county. I mean, we had a fire chief he was the only professional firefighter we had. And
Right.
now I think we probably got 30 or 40 professionals. And
Well, I have an incredible staff. Like I said, we're a 10-person agency, and we utilize the DPS for administration and for HR. But other than that, we're a standalone agency, which really works for fire service in the state of Georgia. And we do a great job of testing and certifying all the fire service personnel throughout the state.
what did you do before you did this?
Yes, sir. I was 27 years with the Warner Robins Fire Department, and I retired from there, and then I spent 8 years as mayor of the city.
That's
of
what
Warner
I
Robins.
thought. You were the mayor of Warner Robins.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I thought I remembered.
Yes, sir. I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up, sir, but that's
His neighborhood's going down, huh?
Well, I have enjoyed being back in the fire service for the last couple of years. And one thing I've done is I've gone out in my hiring over the last 2 years, and I've brought some people back in the fire service that were out. The lady that runs my ACADIS program. She was out of the fire service for a few years. She had been in the fire service for 10 years. And to see people come back into something that they love doing has been a joy of mine. I wouldn't say I didn't fight fire as mayor. I just fought a different kind of fire. Used to say I'd give anything if I could just run in a burning building. It would be a whole lot easier.
I was going to say politics are fun too, aren't they?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everything's on fire.
That's exactly right.
Well, that's all we have, and if we don't have any questions.
Okay. Well, thank y'all very much.
Again, thanks for
giving me the
sitting
time.
here and-
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
I think I may skip over y'all. No, come on, Office of Highway Safety. Saving the best for last, huh?
The best for last. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee, for indulging us being the last of the list, but, you know.
I don't know who made up the list. I'm gonna have to check with him.
All right, we appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I don't have a whole lot. I just want to take the opportunity to thank the committee for what they've done for me as the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. I would like to divert your attention to 39-1111. We do appreciate that one-time bonus, and as far as recruitment and retention, I do appreciate that. However, with the change in the federal statute that came down from the new bill, which is the bipartisan infrastructure bill, they have encouraged us to do a little more traveling, but we were sort of cut $41,000 as far as traveling. It's my responsibility, along with the deputy director, to go out and have interface with the sheriffs and city chiefs. I would appreciate that consideration to be added back to that sum, which was $41,409 in cuts. And I just want to impress on the committee, here in America, we have over 42,000 deaths per year. And we seem to have grown just accustomed to it. But, Mr. Chairman, I think at this state of the game, we need to look at what we get dollar for dollar. We receive only 6% of what we could get. The feds would allow us up to 18%, and we're leaving about $1.4 million on the table. And hopefully sometime in the future, I'd like for the committee to take a strong look at that, what we're advocating for. With that, Mr. Chairman.
Did you meet with, prior to this, with the folks from the governor's office about your budget?
Yes, sir, I have met with them several times, and I'm gratefully appreciated of what they do and what we've talked about. And I just like to, bring that to the committee's attention. But with that said, I want to defer the rest of my time, if I have any left, to the director. I got Josh here with me today, the director of driver's education.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me to your awards banquet last year, and I think there were several comments made about how bad I was sweating. And, as I walked back to my car, I passed out, and my wife asked me if I hit my head because I seemed to be all right. But I had COVID and didn't have any idea. I'm glad I didn't infect any of your people that were sitting at the table with me. But
no, sir, you didn't, and I appreciate your attendance, sir.
Well, I felt bad when I went, but I had no idea that that I had COVID or that I was to the point of passing out in the parking lot. But I just was walking. Next thing I knew, I woke up and was looking around. And
I'm glad you're doing well. Thank you, Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Chairman.
Well, my wife said I probably landed on my head. That's the only thing that saved me. And so, hey, Josh.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just bring your attention to 39.12.2. It's a reduction in driver training funds in accordance with a decrease in collections. That decrease is $1,425,000.
course, the decrease in collections obviously was because the law stated that we take 3%, and somebody reduced it to 1.5%.
Yes, sir. Originally at 5%, then 1.5%, up to 3% now. But the main reason for the reduction in the collections is because of in 2022 there was a sunset of the collection of the fees.
Right.
And that bill failed to pass the Senate on sine die, and we went a whole year without any collections.
I remember
sure you're
well.
very familiar with that
I
bill.
remember well. But and I don't even have to ask this question to know the answer. There's still a lot of demand.
Yes, sir. There are
Much more than you can ever.
We are currently denying about 70% of all of our applicants for our scholarship program on a monthly basis.
And most of those applicants are based on financial need.
They are all on financial need.
Well, and it doesn't happen that often. People thinks it happens more than it does. But you know, the other part of it, the first priority is military personnel and public safety personnel have been killed in the line of duty. Children get first priority. But
that's correct.
You don't get many of them, do you?
Maybe 10 a month.
10 a month?
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised it was that many.
And also the students in state foster care.
Well, that was a priority of mine, foster care. When they turned 18 to get turned out, you know. I just can't imagine being pushed out the door with nowhere to go and nobody to help me. And, you know, I thought the best we could do is give them a driver's license. It gives them a chance then where they can
Sure.
obtain employment. I don't know how you obtain employment in this day and time if you don't have a driver's license and don't have anybody to help you. So,
They are eligible. I passed that bill. We put it into statute that extends foster care support to foster
right.
children to 21.
Oh, to 21 now?
Yes.
But are they? Do they still live in foster care, or are they?
It's up to them.
So they can live independently and still draw that.
And still get rental assistance.
That's great. I appreciate that. 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, I just wanted to, you made the comment that 70% of the applicants are denied. How many total applicants are you talking about there?
To date, this fiscal year, we've had 3,456 applicants. That was through our January cutoff date.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
But those people are selected by lottery, aren't they?
They are. So we have awarded 1,050 and denied 2,496 this year.
Okay.
And they all qualify based on financial need.
Right. So we never get to the third priority, which is everybody else.
We don't have a third priority anyway.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Well, I hate to be the person that decides whether the sheriffs go first or the chiefs. Well, the sheriff say the chief, so I guess we'll take the sheriff. No, come on, chief. He's the last one we have, isn't it? The TC. You probably got an unfunded mandate, don't you?
I think so. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Butch Ayers, and I'm the executive director of the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. I've been in that job for about 4 years. Prior to that, I spent 35 years with the Gwinnett County Police Department.
And was the chief?
Last 5 years, I was the chief. Just a little bit about GACP. You may not know, we were established in 1962, and we have 3 primary services that we provide. We provide training, agency certification, and promotional assessments. And what I really want to talk about is our training hours. Training hours are covered under OCGA 35-8-20, which basically states that all police chiefs and heads of each law enforcement unit shall complete 20 hours of training every year. And if you go to subsection B, the training required by the subsection, shall be completed in sessions as selected and provided or approved by the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. So basically, your chiefs have to receive annual executive training credit hours, 20 of those every year. That's either provided by us, approved by us, or selected by us. And any chief that fails to receive that actually loses their powers of arrest on January 1st of the following year. And in the event that the chief does not get their hours, they do lose their powers of arrest, and they have to apply for a waiver through post and make up those hours. The other section I wanted to talk about is OCGA 35-8-20.1. And basically this is where a newly appointed chief has to obtain or successfully complete a minimum of 60 hours of law enforcement chief executive training at the classes, executive training class sponsored by the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police following his or her appointment. And basically what this is a state law requiring that the newly appointed chiefs attend, lack of better terms, chief school. This is a 60-hour course. We provide that last several years. It's been 4 sessions per year, and in calendar year 2024, we will be conducting 5 sessions, and there's usually about 30 candidates in each session. And as far as going back to the OCGA 35-8-20, as far as the annual recurrent 20-hour training, we provide that through conducting 2 separate training conferences per year, providing approximately 31 hours of training at both conferences. Our winter conference, you receive 14 hours of training. Our summer conference is typically 17 hours of training. We also provide additional training for GACP at our district meetings throughout the state. And going, I guess, down to the bottom of page 4, we do receive state appropriations. Currently, it's at $368,015. It's been that way since FY 2020. And just some of the metrics since that time through the end of fiscal year 2023, number of chiefs and command staffs attending chief school has increased over 25%. Number of chiefs and command staff attending the annual training is increased 14%, and the number of students attending both types of training has increased just over 15%. GSCP's cost for providing the training and the personnel cost for the instructors and the office personnel providing this training is $728,422 annually, minus the current state funding, and that's a difference of $360,407. And what we do are doing is utilizing our exhibitors or sponsors' fees when they come to our trade shows or our training conferences. We're having to utilize some members' dues and other sources of funds to actually meet this gap between what's provided from the state legislature to meet our needs. And that's the short and quick of it. And on the for the benefit of time, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
And of course, you said it, but it's mandated. It's state law. State requires you to do it, but
that's correct.
They don't fund it appropriately. Anybody else got any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like a lot of training. Like, does it make sense to reduce it?
Actually, I think it should go the other direction.
Really?
I think that 20 hours of training for a chief executive is on the low end of the scale.
Annually?
Annually, yes, sir.
Wow.
And on top of that, that is just executive training. That does not include the additional governor's initiative hours. So actually, every police chief needs to get a total of 27 hours of training annually. 7 hours governor's initiative, and the remaining 20 hours of chief executive.
Okay. Can you tell us just a little bit about what the training is like and how it changes over time? Does it change much from year to year?
Yes, and that's the thing. We provide top-notch instructors because a lot of things change. I mean, our world is different from 2014. Our world is different since 2020 in the realm of law enforcement. And typically, we just finished up our winter training conference last week in Columbus. We're all attendees. We had 418 attendees attend and received 14 hours of annual training. We had training talking about the use of ALPRs, automated license plate readers, in the state, the new laws and provisions regarding sexual assault, leadership practices, and leadership subjects. Talking about real-time crime centers and a lot of up-to-date and things that are changing throughout law enforcement. And we even had a session on vascular neck restraints. And so what we do is we look at what's occurring throughout the United States in policing, as well as what we see in our state, and what is the training that we need, that our chiefs need. We actually have a training committee, and they will solicit the members of our association who are the chiefs, and what type of training do you need? And what we want to do is provide that upper level, that executive type of leadership training. We don't need to spend time for a chief, learning how to work a traffic accident or traffic accident refresher or something like that. But no, I think 20, in my opinion, is 20 hours is pretty much on the low end of what a chief should be getting every year.
Okay. Thank you.
28?
Does that include the post-training that they're required to have?
Yes. This is all sanctioned or through
Okay.
post-approved. And so all certified officers in the state of Georgia are required to get their annual 20.
Mhm.
And that is included. But a chief, if a chief takes a course at post, for instance, on accident investigation, they're going to get those hours for post, but it's not going to count towards executive level training.
Okay, so that's kind of specific towards those chiefs.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And it often appertains to those things that chiefs are going to have to deal with. I mean, at an executive level, like you said, there's a lot of sexual change here in the laws and how things are processed, and it's just a myriad of different issues on the table now.
Right. And I think there's a lot of value for chief to actually meet at conferences
Sure.
and be able to exchange information. We have different breakout groups, and it's like if you go to the almost the last page, a little bit, our summer training conference in Savannah last year, 698 attendees received 17 hours, and they were able to choose from 21 different topics. And because we have a wide variety of chiefs in the state of Georgia, we have one-man, one-officer departments, and we have 1,000 officer departments. We have north-south. We have agencies with resources, agencies without resources. So the 368,000, is an ask for an additional for fiscal year 25. And from my understanding is that currently the 368,000 is in this year's budget, but what we're asking for is the additional to cover the gap.
360,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you very much.
I'll try and go when it's in Savannah. The sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Executive Director Terry Norris.
Yes,
Been-
sir. Thank you.
Been here forever.
Yeah, a long time.
Say it again?
Faster
you are. I'm very quick. You've heard from me before. Thank you for giving us a moment this afternoon. We do appreciate that. It's always good to follow the chiefs. You know, it takes the sheriffs a lot longer to learn stuff than it does the chiefs. So they've got a 60-hour. Is that for class. publication? I'm sure it is. Ours is 4 weeks, and that's not what we're here for. I provided for you today a sheriff's handbook. That handbook is revised every 4 years when we have sheriff's elections. It's being revised right now for this end of the year sheriff's academy, which is 4 weeks, which is not why we're here today. But I wanted you to see those things. This book grows every year based on what you all ask the sheriffs to do. Sheriffs do many unique things based on what historically governors and legislatures have said, Sheriff, you do this or don't do that. So our training is a little different than the chiefs. We train not only the sheriffs in 3 training conferences a year, sheriffs training conferences, but we also have about 5 other conferences we hold for deputy sheriffs and jailers and other specialized sheriff staff that are performing duties that are in the book. Sex offender registration is a good example. That's one of our largest conferences. We'll have close to 300 deputies and other administrative staff that come and listen to us talk to them about the sex offender registry law. Sheriffs are the ones who register sex offenders. Nobody else does it. GBI has the statewide database. However, when someone gets out of prison, for instance, they have to register with the sheriff. We upload that information. So we do a lot of training beyond just the sheriffs because of these things that we have to do under state law. And our annual operating budget for the Sheriff's Association is about a little over $3 million. Our training budget, specifically to training, nothing else, is about $1.2 million. And over the past, I guess since fiscal year 2020, our appropriation that you all have kindly afforded us through the Post Council has been $540,216. It got reduced from $659,244 and I guess it started in 2021. So we're here today, as the chiefs are, trying to recover some of that money. Honestly, y'all, we don't expect the legislature to fund all of this training, and we spend a lot of our own resources through our, we're fortunate to have reserves that we have accumulated over the years, and using our reserves, using sometime fees for conferences to help offset that additional cost. But I agree with Butch Ayers, my counterpart of the chiefs. There's not enough training, and his is a little different, as I said, but ours, it's really difficult in these times where almost nobody in our profession keeps people very long. And as an example, on the sex offender registration and jails and these other things, these people are all constantly leaving. So a lot of times we're providing some pretty elementary training modules or conferences for folks that just walk in the door. So we appreciate what you've done for us in the past, and we thank you for a few moments this afternoon. And we know the sheriffs support you. We know you can't do it all. We do appreciate what you've done for us thus far. And once again, the training state mandated. Yes, sir. So,
Yes, sir.
I mean, you have to do it, but you're not getting funded for it.
Well, I mean, the 20 hours for sure, but the things I said that we really focus on are the things that they do, that y'all told them to do historically, that nobody else does. So it's hard, for instance, and they don't offer it, but for Gypstick to offer a course on sex offender registration. Nobody does it there. Jails, although they do some jail training, we're kind of heavy on the jail training side as well. So, but thank you for your time today.
The training's awful important in the jail, because that's where you get sued all the time.
Yes, sir.
So,
I hope I was brief enough.
you're a good man. I don't care what they say about you.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks, sir.
Okay, we got one more. Association of County Commissioners. Sheriff may want to stay around and hear what he's got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Sure.
you, fellow committee members, for allowing me to speak today. Coming to you on an issue that we brought before you last year, dealing with per diems for state prisoners housed in local county jails and county correctional institutions. Just in case, kind of to provide you all some context, in case you might not be aware, the Georgia Department of Corrections, sometimes they have state prisoners who are waiting. They've been sentenced, but they're just awaiting to go into custody of the Georgia Department of Corrections. So sometimes they end up in local county jails and county correctional institutions, right? The county correctional institutions tend to be a longer stay because they're typically working and doing things on behalf of the counties in different roles, but the county jails is supposed to be a shorter stay. But one of the things that we found is that it is actually very expensive, one, just to house prisoners in general, but specifically those state prisoners as well. So we do receive a per diem from, appropriated from you all. So we're coming here today to ask for an increase in that per diem, just based on some of the data that we've shown that it is much more expensive to house these state prisoners than we're receiving in per diem. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you all for your consideration.
Well, if I remember correctly, it's $22 a day, isn't it?
Yeah, so $22 a day for
We put in $2 extra last year, and it got cut out.
It did. It became a part of the governor's disregard statement. So,
And we have a correctional system in the county I live in, and I think our friend from Moultrie has contacted you too. He has one down there, and both of them, he's the county manager down there also, and my county manager tells me if we don't give them some more money, they're going to shut down because they can 1099 folks to go out and pick up trash and cut grass and do better financially than having the prisoners come at $22 a day. It costs them much more than that to maintain them.
Yeah, it's very expensive. I mean, we have numbers that range from $50 to $60 a day to, the cost to house those state prisoners, and receiving only $22 a day leaves a lot of gap there. So we're thankful for that budget appropriation last year and hope that we can follow it up again this year.
Well, you the man we were waiting for.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any questions? Well, we appreciate it. That concludes the meeting, and we still got about 20 minutes left. So,
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate
it.